The invisible hero who took a bullet for a billion-dollar CEO. They say you never know who's standing beside you until it's too late. On the 42nd floor of Halden Financial Tower, a CEO who built an empire on ruthlessness learned this truth the hardest way possible when the janitor she'd ignored for 6 years threw himself in front of a bullet meant for her. This is the story of Evan Merrick, the invisible hero who proved that courage doesn't wear a suit. Stay until the end and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You won't believe what happens next. The morning of October 17th started like any other Tuesday at Halden Financial Corporation. The sun climbed over Manhattan's skyline, casting long shadows across the glass and steel monument to American capitalism that was the Halden Tower. 42 stories of power, ambition, and money. On the ground floor, tourists snapped photos. On the trading floors, analysts shouted into phones. And on the executive level, the 42nd floor, where the air seemed thinner and the carpets cost more than most people's cars, Miranda Cole prepared for war. Not the kind with guns and soldiers, the kind with spreadsheets and shareholders. Miranda stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive boardroom, her reflection sharp against the cityscape. At 43, she was everything the business magazines said she was: brilliant, beautiful, and brutal. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that said efficient, her Armani suit tailored to project authority, her heels expensive enough to hurt. She'd been CEO of Halden Financial for 8 years, following in her father's footsteps, and in that time she'd doubled the company's value, laid off 2,000 employees, and earned a reputation as the Ice Queen of Wall Street. She preferred focused. Behind her, the boardroom table stretched like an aircraft carrier, surrounded by leather chairs that cost $8,000 each. 12 executives sat in various states of nervous energy, checking their phones, shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. They were waiting for the quarterly review meeting to begin, a meeting Miranda had called unexpectedly, which meant someone's head was on the chopping block. "Janice," Miranda said without turning around, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel, "tell me why our West Coast portfolio is underperforming by 17%. Janice Hammond, VP of Regional Operations, went pale. Her carefully prepared presentation suddenly felt woefully inadequate. "Market conditions have been—" "I don't pay you to explain market conditions," Miranda interrupted, turning slowly. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds and just as warm. "I pay you to overcome them. Perhaps I should pay someone else." The room went silent except for the hum of the building's HVAC system and the distant murmur of the city below. This was Miranda's world. Cold, controlled, predictable. It was about to shatter. Outside the boardroom, in the executive corridor, Evan Merrick pushed his janitor's cart across marble floors that reflected the recessed lighting like a still pond. The cart's wheels squeaked rhythmically, squeak, 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 a sound so common that nobody heard it anymore. Evan had learned that's how most invisible things worked. They weren't truly invisible. People just decided not to see them. At 51, Evan had the kind of face that told stories if you bothered to look. Weathered skin, a slight crook in his nose from where it had been broken twice, gray threading through his dark hair, and eyes. Those eyes that had seen too much and somehow stayed kind anyway. He wore the same thing every day. Dark blue maintenance uniform with Halden Financial, custodial services, embroidered on the chest, and underneath a plain white t-shirt that hid the scars. Most people who passed him in the halls didn't see Evan Merrick, combat medic, decorated veteran, father, survivor. They saw a janitor, equipment, furniture that occasionally moved and cleaned things. Evan had made peace with that years ago, mostly. He checked his watch, an old Timex his wife had given him 15 years earlier, back when she was still alive, back when he still believed in new beginnings. 9:47 a.m. He had 3 more floors to cover before his shift break, and then he'd promised Emery he'd call during her lunch period. His daughter, his entire world, his reason for waking up every morning and doing a job that paid $16.50 an hour when he'd once commanded teams of medical specialists in combat zones. But Emery needed consistency. Emery needed a dad who came home every night, not one who deployed to places where American flags came back folded in triangles. So Evan mopped floors and emptied trash bins and existed in the margins of other people's important lives. He was refilling the soap dispenser in the executive washroom when he heard it. Voices. Raised. Wrong. Evan's training kicked in before his conscious mind could process the information. The tone, the cadence, the underlying frequency of panic. His body recognized it the way a combat veteran recognizes the whistle of incoming mortars. His hand froze on the soap dispenser. His heart rate didn't increase. Years of emergency response had taught him that adrenaline was useful only if you controlled it. He moved to the door and opened it slightly. The executive corridor was mostly empty, standard for this time of morning when everyone who mattered was in meetings. But there, near the boardroom entrance, a man in an ill-fitting suit was arguing with Susan Chen, the executive floor receptionist. "Sir, you can't go in there," Susan was saying, her voice professionally firm but edged with concern. "If you don't have an appointment—" "I had an appointment," the man shouted, and Evan saw Susan flinch. "I had an appointment for 15 years, and then she just—" The man's voice broke, and that's when Evan saw his hand. The gun was small, probably a .38 revolver, held low against the man's thigh. Amateur grip, shaking, which made it more dangerous, not less. Every nerve in Evan's body went electric. His training cataloged details in microseconds. White male, approximately 45, perspiring despite the building's climate control, disheveled appearance suggesting sleep deprivation, weapon visible only from certain angles, psychological state, escalating. Evan didn't think. He'd learned a long time ago that thinking got people killed. He stepped into the corridor. "Hey!" he called out, his voice calm, conversational, as if he'd just noticed two friends chatting. "Everything okay?" The man's head whipped around. Up close, Evan could see the broken capillaries in his eyes, the tremor in his jaw. This was someone at the end of a very long, very bad road. "Who the hell are you?" the man demanded. "Maintenance," Evan said, gesturing to his uniform. He kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. "Just wondering if you needed any help finding something. This floor can be confusing." "I know exactly where I need to go." The man's hand tightened on the gun. "I need to see Miranda Cole. I need to see the woman who destroyed my life." Behind the reception desk, Susan had gone completely still, her hand hovering near the phone. Evan caught her eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. "Don't move, don't escalate." "Okay," Evan said slowly. "I understand. You want to talk to Miss Cole. That makes sense. What's your name?" "David." The man laughed, bitter and broken. "Like it matters. Like she would remember. I was employee number 3847. Just a number. Just another—" His voice cracked. "I gave this company 15 years. 15 years. I missed my daughter's childhood. I missed anniversaries. I killed myself trying to make them happy. And then one day, security escorts me out with a box of my things and a severance package that didn't even cover 2 months' mortgage." Evan's heart sank. He knew this story. He'd heard versions of it 100 times in VA hospitals and support groups. When you took away a person's purpose, their identity, you created a wound that didn't show up on X-rays but bled just as real. "David," Evan said quietly, "I hear you. I understand." "No, you don't." David raised the gun slightly. "You're just a janitor. You don't know what it's like to be someone who mattered and then just—" "You're right," Evan interrupted gently. "I'm just a janitor, which means I'm exactly the kind of person who knows what it feels like to be invisible, to be the one people look through instead of at." David blinked. Some of the fury in his face flickered. "But here's the thing," Evan continued, taking one careful step forward. "You're not invisible right now. I see you, Susan sees you, and whatever you're planning to do in that boardroom, that's not going to make people see you the way you want to be seen. That's just going to make you the thing they were afraid of." "I don't care anymore," David's shout echoed through the marble corridor. "I don't care what they think. I just want her to look at me. I want her to see what she did." Inside the boardroom, Miranda was mid-sentence when she heard the shout. She stopped. frowned. "What was that?" asked Michael Torres, CFO. Before anyone could answer, the boardroom doors burst open. David stood in the doorway, gun raised, and for one terrible moment, the entire world held its breath. 12 executives froze. Janice Hammond's presentation clattered to the floor. Someone gasped. And Miranda Cole, who had built a career on never showing fear, felt ice flood her veins. "You," David said, his voice shaking as badly as the gun in his hand. His finger was on the trigger. "You took everything from me. Do you even remember my name? Do you even remember?" Miranda's mind raced. She'd authorized hundreds of terminations, maybe thousands. This man could have been any of them. David Hutchins, he said, tears streaming down his face now. 15 years? Regional accounts? I made this company millions, and you threw me away like I was nothing. Behind David, in the doorway, Evan Merrick appeared. His movements were so quiet, so controlled, that at first no one noticed him. He'd followed David down the corridor, staying back, looking for an opening. Now he assessed the situation in the way only someone with combat medical training could. 12 potential casualties. One armed aggressor in psychological crisis, approximately 20 feet between the gunman and the nearest executive. Miranda Cole was standing near the window, the primary target, most exposed position. The gun was pointed at her heart. Evan calculated angles, distances, timing. He was 51 years old. His knees weren't what they used to be. He'd had 2 surgeries on his left shoulder from an IED injury in Fallujah. But his training was muscle memory, written into his body the way prayers are written into the faithful. He thought about Emery, thought about how she'd asked him last week what a hero really was. Thought about how he'd told her, someone who does the right thing even when it's hard, even when it costs them something. She'd looked at him with those serious 9-year-old eyes and said, "Like you, Dad?" He'd laughed it off, deflected. He was just a janitor now. His hero days were behind him. But looking at David Hutchins, broken, desperate, seconds from doing something that couldn't be undone, and looking at Miranda Cole, frozen, finally afraid, finally vulnerable, Evan realized something. Your hero days aren't behind you until you decide they are. "David," Evan said quietly from the doorway. David spun, wild-eyed. The gun swung away from Miranda and toward Evan. Several people in the boardroom screamed. "Put it down," Evan said. Not a command, a request from one human to another. "Please, you don't want this. I know you think you do, but you don't. Your daughter, you mentioned a daughter, she needs you. Not in prison, not dead. She needs her father." "My daughter doesn't even speak to me anymore." David's shout was anguish incarnate. "I lost her too. I lost everything." "Then don't lose yourself." Evan took one step into the room. His hands were up, empty, open. "David, I've been where you are. Different circumstances, maybe, but that feeling, like the whole world forgot you existed, I know it. And I'm telling you, this isn't the answer. This doesn't fix it. Nothing fixes it." David swung the gun back toward Miranda. "Nothing fixes what people like her do to people like us." And that's when Miranda Cole did something she'd never done in any crisis before. She spoke from the heart. "You're right." The room went completely silent. David's hand wavered. Miranda took one small step forward. "You're right. I don't remember you. I don't remember your name or your work or your—" Her voice caught. "I don't remember your humanity, and that's my failure. Not yours, mine." David stared at her, the gun still raised but trembling now. "I built this company by making hard decisions," Miranda continued, and for the first time in her career, her voice wasn't steel. It was just human. By cutting costs and maximizing efficiency and treating people like numbers on a spreadsheet, I told myself it was business, just business. But you're not a number, David. You're someone's father, someone's— "I was someone," David interrupted, sobbing now. "I was someone." "You still are," Evan said quietly. He'd moved closer, positioning himself between David and Miranda without David fully realizing it. "You're still someone, David. You're still here. You still matter. And what you do in the next 10 seconds, that's going to define what your daughter remembers about you for the rest of her life." David's arm was shaking violently now. "I just wanted her to see me, to see what she did." "I see you," Miranda whispered. "I see you now, David. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." For a moment, everyone in that room believed it would be okay, that David would lower the gun, that somehow, impossibly, words had been enough. And then David's phone rang. The sound was jarring, absurd, a cheerful pop song ringtone in the middle of a hostage situation. David flinched, his finger already on the trigger tensed reflexively. The gun fired. Evan didn't think. His body was already moving before the sound registered. 15 years of combat medicine, of training that said, save them first, ask questions later, of muscles that remembered what it meant to be someone who ran toward danger instead of away. All of it compressed into a single moment. He lunged forward, arms outstretched, body angling to cover as much of Miranda Cole as physically possible. The bullet hit him in the left side of his chest, just below his collarbone. The impact was like being hit with a sledgehammer wrapped in fire. Evan had been shot before, twice, actually, in Kandahar, and his body recognized the sensation with an almost clinical detachment. Entry wound, no exit wound, bullet still inside, possible subclavian artery damage, possible pneumothorax. He felt his legs give out, felt himself falling, felt Miranda's shocked gasp of air as his weight brought them both down. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Someone screamed. Multiple people ran for the doors. David stood frozen, staring at the gun in his hand as if it had materialized there, as if he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "Oh, God," David whispered. "Oh, God. Oh, God. I didn't." Security burst through the doors. 3 guards who'd been on the floor below when the panic button was triggered. They tackled David, sending the gun clattering across the marble floor. David didn't resist. He collapsed into their grip, sobbing. On the ground, Evan felt warm blood soaking through his uniform. His breath came in short, painful gasps. He'd treated enough penetrating chest wounds to know he probably had minutes before shock set in. Maybe less. His training kicked in automatically. Assess, prioritize, survive. But before he could do any of that, he felt hands on his face. Miranda Cole was kneeling beside him, her perfect suit stained with his blood, her expression shattered. Oh, God, why would you? Evan tried to smile. It probably looked more like a grimace. Someone, his voice came out wet, labored. Someone had to. Don't talk. Miranda looked around frantically. Call 911. Someone call. Where's the medical? Already called, someone shouted. Ambulance is coming. Evan's vision was starting to narrow at the edges. That wasn't good. That meant blood loss, shock, possibly internal bleeding. He'd seen this in dozens of patients. Never thought he'd experience it himself. Stay with me, Miranda said, and Evan realized she was crying. Miranda Cole, the ice queen of Wall Street, who'd never shown emotion in any quarterly meeting or hostile takeover or mass layoff, was crying over a janitor bleeding out on her boardroom floor. Please, stay with me. What's your name? Tell me your name. Evan, he managed. Evan Merrick. Evan, she said it like a prayer. Evan, stay awake. Keep your eyes open. Help is coming. You're going to be fine. You're going to... But Evan's eyes were already closing. Not because he wanted them to. His body was making decisions for him now, prioritizing functions, shutting down non-essential systems to preserve what little blood pressure remained. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was Miranda's voice, raw and desperate. Somebody help him, please. Somebody save this man's life. And somewhere in his fading consciousness, Evan thought, that's funny. That's what I was trying to do. Then, darkness. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. Excellent response time for Midtown Manhattan. They found Evan Merrick unconscious, pulse thready at 130 beats per minute, blood pressure 80/40, and dropping. The lead paramedic, a woman named Chen, who'd seen more than her share of gunshot wounds, did a quick assessment and didn't like what she found. We need to move, she told her partner. Now. He's circling the drain. They had him on a gurney and in the elevator in 90 seconds. In the ambulance in 4 minutes. Racing toward Mount Sinai West with sirens screaming in 6 minutes. In the boardroom, Miranda Cole sat on the floor, covered in someone else's blood, while her executive team hovered uselessly and security led David Hutchins away in handcuffs. The man was still sobbing, still saying, "I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to," as if repetition could undo what had been done. Michael Torres, the CFO, crouched beside Miranda. "Are you hurt? Miranda, are you?" "I'm fine." Her voice sounded strange, distant. "I'm perfectly fine." "We should get you checked out anyway. The paramedics—" "I said I'm fine," Miranda snapped, and Michael flinched back. She looked down at her hands, her perfectly manicured, always controlled hands, and saw them shaking, saw the blood under her fingernails. Evan Merrick's blood. A janitor. A man whose name she hadn't known until he'd told her while bleeding out on her floor. A man who'd thrown himself in front of a bullet meant for her. "Who is he?" Miranda asked quietly. "What?" "The janitor. Evan Merrick. Who is he? Get me his file. Get me everything. Employment records, background, emergency contacts, everything." Michael exchanged glances with Janice Hammond. "Miranda, maybe you should—" "Get me his file!" Miranda's shout echoed through the boardroom. "Now!" 10 minutes later, she was in her office, door locked, reading through the thin personnel file of a man named Evan Merrick, while her hands still trembled and her suit still bore the evidence of his sacrifice. Employee ID 3891. Position, Custodial Services, Executive Floor Hire. Date, June 3rd, 2019. Emergency contact, Emery Merrick, daughter, age 9. There was more. Previous address, basic work history, standard background check, but it was the additional notes section that made Miranda's blood freeze. Military service, U.S. Navy, 1992-2012. Rank, Chief Hospital Corpsman. Deployments, Iraq, 3. Afghanistan, 2. Commendations, Navy Cross, Purple Heart, 2. Bronze Star with Valor. And underneath that, a note from the HR manager who'd processed his application. Applicant is significantly overqualified but specifically requested custodial position due to family circumstances. Combat medic with extensive trauma experience. Recommended hire. Good for company insurance rates and veteran outreach program. Miranda read the note 3 times. Then she pulled up Google and searched Navy Cross. The Navy Cross is the second highest military decoration awarded by the Department of the Navy for extraordinary heroism in combat. She read that line 5 times. Then she opened her desk drawer, pulled out a bottle of bourbon she kept for late nights and difficult decisions, and poured 3 fingers into a crystal tumbler. Her hand was still shaking when she raised it to her lips. On the 42nd floor of Halden Financial Tower, the cleaning crew arrived to scrub blood off marble floors. The boardroom was declared a crime scene and sealed off. Employees were sent home early. The communications department drafted 3 different press releases. And Miranda Cole sat alone in her office, drinking bourbon and staring at the personnel file of a man she'd never bothered to see, wondering how you thank someone for saving your life when you'd spent years treating them like they didn't exist. At Mount Sinai West, in Operating Room 3, Evan Merrick's heart stopped twice. The trauma surgeon, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, brought it back both times. "Come on," she muttered as she worked, her hands moving with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times but never stopped caring. "Come on, hero, don't you quit on me." The bullet had done exactly what Miranda had feared, nicked the subclavian artery, collapsed his left lung, and lodged against his 4th rib. Dr. Okonkwo extracted it, repaired the artery, reinflated the lung, and closed him up with the kind of meticulous care she usually reserved for her own family members. "Is he going to make it?" a nurse asked as they wheeled him to recovery. Dr. Okonkwo stripped off her gloves. "He's strong, healthy, good cardiovascular system, probably from all those years of military training. If he makes it through the next 24 hours without complications, I'd say his chances are good. I heard what he did. Heard he saved that CEO's life. Then I guess we better make sure he lives to be properly thanked." In the ICU, Evan lay unconscious, machines breathing for him, monitors tracking every heartbeat. A nurse named Patricia, who'd worked there for 23 years and had seen every kind of patient imaginable, updated his chart and then did something she rarely did. She said a prayer. Because sometimes medicine needed a little help. And Evan Merrick, she thought, seemed like exactly the kind of person God would want to keep around. At PS 142 in Queens, 9-year-old Emery Merrick sat in her fourth-grade classroom working on a math worksheet about fractions when the school secretary appeared in the doorway and whispered something to her teacher, Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson's face went very still. She nodded. Then she walked over to Emery's desk and knelt down. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you need to come with me." Emery looked up, suddenly afraid. "Why? Did Dad forget to sign something?" "No, honey, nothing like that. But we need to call your emergency contact." Emery's grandmother, her father's mother, Gloria Merrick, arrived at the school in 15 minutes and took Emery's small hand in her weathered one. "Grandma?" Emery's voice was very small. "Where's Dad?" Gloria Merrick was 74 years old. She'd raised 4 children, buried a husband, and watched her youngest son deploy to war zones 5 times, holding her breath each time until he came home safe. She'd thought those days of fear were over. She'd been wrong. "Your dad had an accident at work, baby," Gloria said carefully. "He's in the hospital, but he's strong, and the doctors are taking very good care of him." "What kind of accident?" Gloria looked at her granddaughter, this bright, brave little girl who'd already lost her mother to cancer and now might lose her father to violence, and did what she'd always done, told the truth. "Someone got hurt, and your dad helped them. That's what your dad does, Emery. He helps people." Emery's eyes filled with tears. "Is he going to be okay?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But I know he's fighting. Your dad's a fighter." In the car on the way to the hospital, Emery sat very still, clutching the backpack her father had helped her pack that morning when the world was still normal and safe. Inside the backpack was her math homework, a library book about space, and a picture she'd drawn for him, a crayon drawing of the two of them holding hands with "My Hero" written across the top in careful, childish letters. She wondered if she'd get to give it to him. She wondered if heroes could die from helping people. She wondered what she'd do if the answer was yes. At Mount Sinai West, Miranda Cole had to use her considerable influence just to get past the security desk. The hospital staff didn't care that she was a CEO or a billionaire. She wasn't family. She wasn't on the approved visitor list. "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but unless you're next of kin, he saved my life." Miranda's voice cracked. "He took a bullet meant for me. I need to know he's alive." The security guard looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something that transcended policy and procedure. He saw a human being who'd witnessed something traumatic and needed closure. "Third floor ICU, but you can't see him. Family only." "I understand. Thank you." Miranda took the elevator to the 3rd floor and stood outside the ICU, looking through the glass at the rows of beds and machines and critically ill patients who represented someone's entire world. She didn't know which one was Evan Merrick. She didn't know if he was alive or dead. And she didn't know why that mattered so much to someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of not caring. A nurse came out, noticed her standing there. "Can I help you?" "Evan Merrick, the gunshot victim from Halden Financial. Is he alive?" The nurse's expression softened. "Are you family?" "No, Miranda stopped. What was she? The woman he'd saved? The CEO he'd worked for? The person who'd never bothered to learn his name? "I'm nobody, but he's somebody, and I need to know he's okay." The nurse considered this. "He made it through surgery. He's critical but stable. That's all I can tell you." Miranda felt something release in her chest. "Thank you." She turned to leave, and then the elevator doors opened. An elderly woman stepped out, holding the hand of a small girl with dark hair and eyes exactly like Evan Merrick's. Miranda froze. The woman, Gloria, though Miranda didn't know that yet, approached the nurse's station. "I'm here to see my son, Evan Merrick. He was brought in a few hours ago with a gunshot wound." The nurse checked her computer. "You're on his emergency contact list. This must be Emery?" The little girl nodded, mute with fear. "He's in recovery," the nurse said gently. "He's not awake yet, but you can sit with him. This way." As they followed the nurse toward the ICU, Emery looked back. Her eyes met Miranda's. And in that moment, Miranda Cole understood something with perfect, painful clarity. This child might lose her father because of her company, because of her decisions, because of the culture she'd built that had broken a man so badly he'd shown up with a gun. The weight of that realization was crushing. Emery's small voice carried back through the corridor. "Grandma? Is Dad going to die?" Gloria's response was too quiet to hear, but Miranda didn't need to hear it. She could see it in the way Gloria's shoulders tensed, in the way she squeezed Emery's hand. Nobody knew if Evan Merrick would survive. Not the doctors. Not his family. Not the woman whose life he'd saved at the cost of his own. Miranda Cole left the hospital and returned to Halden Financial Tower as the sun set over Manhattan. The building was mostly empty now, employees sent home, boardrooms still sealed, police tape across the elevator that led to the 42nd floor. She took the stairs. In her office, she sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Then she did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She read through every single termination report from the past 5 years. Name after name, position after position, lives disrupted, families affected, all with her signature at the bottom. David Hutchins was there. Terminated 8 months earlier. Cause: position eliminated due to restructuring. Translation: we found someone cheaper. Miranda read until her eyes burned, read until the words blurred together, read until she couldn't anymore. Then she closed the laptop and looked out at the city. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of people who mattered to someone. Somewhere out there, in a hospital bed, Evan Merrick fought for his life. And Miranda Cole, for the first time in her career, prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in that he would win. Because if he died, if this good man, this hero, this father, died because he'd saved her life, Miranda didn't know if she could live with that. She didn't know if she deserved to. The city lights blurred as tears finally came. Hot, unexpected, unstoppable. In the ICU, machines beeped steadily. Evan's heart kept beating, his lungs kept breathing, and a 9-year-old girl held his hand and whispered, "Please don't leave me, Daddy. Please. Heroes don't die. They can't. They can't." Outside, the night deepened. Inside, everyone waited. For dawn, for answers, for miracles. For a janitor named Evan Merrick to open his eyes and return to a world that had finally, belatedly, begun to see him. The first rays of morning light filtered through the ICU windows, casting pale gold across the linoleum floors where Emery Merrick had fallen asleep in a chair too large for her small body. Her head rested against her grandmother's arm, her hand still clutching her father's, and in her sleep she murmured something that might have been "Dad," or might have been a prayer. Gloria Merrick hadn't slept at all. She'd spent the night watching monitors she didn't fully understand, counting heartbeats displayed in green lines, memorizing the rhythm of machines that breathed for her son. At 74, she'd thought she was done with hospital vigils. She'd sat beside her husband as cancer took him piece by piece. She'd held her daughter-in-law's hand as a different cancer did the same thing, faster and crueler. She'd believed, foolishly perhaps, that tragedy had taken its quota from the Merrick family. The universe, it seemed, disagreed. A nurse came in to check Evan's vitals, moving with the practiced quiet of someone who knew that ICUs were places where sleep was precious and rare. She smiled at Gloria, that particular smile healthcare workers reserved for long-night family members, compassionate, encouraging, but carefully non-committal. "How is he?" Gloria asked, her voice rough from hours of silence. "Stable. All his numbers look good. Dr. Okonkwo will be by around 7 for morning rounds." The nurse adjusted an IV drip, made a note on her tablet. "He's a fighter, your son." "Always has been." Gloria looked at Evan's face, pale against the pillow, oxygen cannula in his nose, bandages visible above the hospital gown. "Even as a boy, he never knew when to quit. Drove me half crazy." The nurse smiled, genuine this time. "That's what's going to get him through this. The ones who don't quit, they're the ones who wake up." After she left, Gloria allowed herself a moment of weakness. She pressed her free hand to her mouth and let the tears come, silent and hot, the kind of crying you do when you're too tired to hold anything back anymore. Emery stirred but didn't wake. Evan's heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm, and somewhere in the building, on a different floor entirely, Miranda Cole was arriving for a hospital visit that protocol said she shouldn't be making. She'd gone home around midnight, showered until the water ran cold, and discovered that no amount of soap could wash away the memory of a man's blood soaking into her clothes. She'd stood in her penthouse, $40 million of steel and glass and carefully curated art, and felt like a stranger in her own life. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, she'd opened her laptop and started digging into Evan Merrick's background. Not the thin personnel file Halden Financial kept, but the real story. The one that existed in military records and newspaper archives and Medal of Honor citations. What she found made her physically ill. June 2005, Fallujah, Iraq. Navy Hospital Corpsman Evan Merrick ran through enemy fire to reach wounded Marines. He treated 4 men under active combat conditions, using his own body to shield them during an attack. He was shot twice. He kept working until all 4 Marines were stabilized and evacuated. The Navy Cross citation called it extraordinary heroism in the face of almost certain death. October 2009, Kandahar, Afghanistan. During a patrol ambush, Corpsman Merrick's unit took heavy casualties. He moved from position to position for 3 hours, treating wounded, directing medevac operations, and personally carrying 2 injured soldiers to safety. He received his 2nd Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with Valor Device. And then, the one that made Miranda stop breathing entirely. March 2013, Linden, New Jersey. Off-duty Navy veteran Evan Merrick entered a burning chemical plant to rescue workers trapped by an explosion. He led 8 people to safety despite toxic smoke and structural instability. Local news coverage included photos. Evan, emerging from smoke, face black with soot, supporting an older man who could barely walk. The older man's name was in the caption, Gregory Cole, plant supervisor, Miranda's father. She'd been 26 years old in 2013, fresh out of Harvard Business School, working 100-hour weeks to prove herself worthy of the family business. She remembered getting the call about the explosion, remembered the panic, the drive to New Jersey, the relief when she found her father shaken but alive. He'd told her a worker pulled him out. Some Navy guy, he'd said. Hell of a thing. Didn't even know his name. Nobody had known his name. And 6 years later, when that same nameless hero had applied for a job at Halden Financial, had stood in some HR office filling out forms, had likely walked past Miranda in the hallways, had mopped the floors outside her office, not one person had connected the dots. Miranda had printed the article, brought it with her to the hospital. And now, at 6:30 a.m., she stood outside the ICU with a photograph of her father's rescuer, trying to understand how she'd become the kind of person who forgot to say thank you. A doctor emerged from the unit, Asian woman, early 40s, exhausted but alert. Her ID badge read, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, trauma surgery. Excuse me, Miranda said. Dr. Okonkwo? The surgeon paused. Yes? I'm Miranda Cole. Evan Merrick saved my life yesterday. I need to know how he is. Dr. Okonkwo's expression shifted, became guarded. Are you family? No, but then I can't discuss his condition. HIPAA regulations. I understand. Miranda pulled out the article, hands shaking slightly. But I need you to give this to his family, his mother. I need them to know that this isn't the first time he's saved my life. Dr. Okonkwo took the printout, scanned it quickly. Her eyebrows rose. This is your father? Yes, 6 years ago. Evan pulled him out of a chemical plant fire. We never knew who he was, and then he applied to work at my company, and Miranda's voice broke. I never saw him. I walked past him for years and I never saw him. The surgeon's expression softened slightly. What do you want me to tell them? That I'm sorry, that I owe him everything, Miranda stopped, realizing how inadequate words were. Just give them the article, please. Dr. Okonkwo nodded. He's stable, by the way, since you clearly won't sleep otherwise. He made it through the night, which is the biggest hurdle. If there are no complications, I expect he'll wake up sometime today. Relief flooded through Miranda so intensely she had to lean against the wall. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank his conditioning. Most civilians wouldn't have survived that injury, but your Mr. Merrick isn't most people. Dr. Okonkwo handed back the article. You should give this to them yourself. Room 3, ICU. His mother and daughter have been here all night. I couldn't. They don't want to see me. Maybe not, but hiding doesn't change what happened. And from what I understand about the kind of man lying in that bed, he didn't save your life so you could spend the rest of yours being a coward about it. The words hit like a slap, a necessary one. Dr. Okonkwo walked away, and Miranda stood in the corridor holding a 6-year-old newspaper article, trying to find courage she'd never needed for hostile takeovers or shareholder meetings. Courage, she was learning, had nothing to do with boardrooms. She took a breath, pushed through the ICU doors, found room 3. Through the window, she could see them, an elderly woman sitting vigil, a small girl asleep in a chair, and Evan Merrick motionless in the bed between them, connected to machines that kept him breathing. Miranda raised her hand to knock, hesitated. What do you say to people whose loved one nearly died because of your company? Because of your culture? Because you'd created a place where people broke so badly they showed up with guns? What do you say to a little girl who might lose her father because he was too brave, too good, too much of a hero for a world that didn't deserve him? Before she could decide, the elderly woman looked up. Their eyes met through the glass. Gloria Merrick's expression went through several stages: confusion, recognition, something that might have been anger. Then she stood, carefully extracted her hand from Emery's, and came to the door. She stepped into the hallway and closed the door quietly behind her. Ms. Cole, her voice was neutral, careful. Mrs. Merrick, I'm so sorry. Miranda's practiced speeches died in her throat. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Gloria crossed her arms. She was shorter than Miranda, smaller, but somehow took up more space. My son is lying in that bed because of a man your company broke. So unless you're here to tell me you're going to fix whatever's broken in that place, I don't have words for you. You're right. Miranda held out the article with shaking hands. But I need you to see this. I need you to know this isn't the first time Evan saved my family. Gloria took the paper, read it. Her expression shifted, surprise, then something more complicated. This is your father. Yes. The plant explosion. March 2013. Evan pulled him out. We never knew his name, never got to thank him. And then years later, he was working in my building, and The word stuck in Miranda's throat. I never saw him. I walked past him every day for years, and I never saw him. Gloria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its edge. That sounds about right. Evan doesn't do things to be seen. He does them because they need doing. I know that now. Miranda wiped at her eyes, not caring that she was crying in front of a stranger. Mrs. Merrick, I need you to understand something. Your son is a hero, not just for what he did yesterday, but for who he is. And I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure people like him are never invisible again. Pretty words. Gloria handed back the article. But my granddaughter in there, she doesn't need pretty words. She needs her father to wake up. She needs to know that good men don't die for doing good things. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Gloria studied her for a long moment. You want to help? You want to do something useful? Anything. There's a cafeteria on the second floor. Emery hasn't eaten since lunch yesterday. She won't leave her father's side, but she trusts me. If I go get her something, she might eat it, but I don't want to leave them alone. Miranda understood immediately. I'll sit with them. Yes, please. Let me do this. Gloria looked skeptical, but exhaustion won out over caution. His monitors are green. He's stable. If anything changes, anything, you press the call button. The nurses come running. I understand. And Ms. Cole, if my granddaughter asks who you are, you tell her the truth. No corporate nonsense, no politician answers. The truth. The girl's had enough people lie to her in her short life. I will. I promise. Gloria nodded and walked toward the elevators, shoulders bent with exhaustion and fear, and too many nights spent in hospitals watching people she loved fight to stay alive. Miranda entered room 3 as quietly as she could. The machines were louder up close. The steady beep of the heart monitor, the rhythmic sigh of supplemental oxygen, the soft hum of an IV pump. Evan looked smaller than he had in the boardroom. Vulnerable. Human. The bandages on his chest were stark white against his skin. Miranda sat in the chair Gloria had vacated, careful not to disturb Emery, who still slept with her small hand wrapped around her father's much larger one. She looked at Evan's face, really looked, and tried to reconcile the man lying there with the janitor she'd never noticed. How had she missed so much? How had she become someone who looked at people and only saw their function, their role, their use to her? "You're the CEO, lady." Miranda jumped. Emery was awake, watching her with those serious dark eyes, eyes exactly like her father's. "Yes," Miranda said. "I'm Miranda Cole." "You're the one my dad saved." "Yes." Emery sat up straighter, still holding Evan's hand. "Why? Why what, sweetheart? Why did my dad save you?" There was no accusation in the question, just genuine curiosity from a 9-year-old trying to understand why her father was in a hospital bed. Miranda chose her words carefully, remembering Gloria's warning about truth. "Because a bad thing was happening, and your dad saw someone who needed help, and helping people is what your dad does." "Even when it hurts him?" "Especially then, I think." Emery considered this. "That's what heroes do. They help people even when it's scary or hard or—" Her voice broke. "Even when they might die." Miranda felt tears burning her eyes again. "Your dad didn't die, Emery. He's right here, and he's going to be okay." "How do you know?" "Because he's the bravest person I've ever met. And brave people don't give up." Emery looked at her father, then back at Miranda. "Do you know my dad?" And here was the moment. The truth or a comfortable lie? Miranda chose truth. "No," she said quietly. "I didn't. Your dad worked in my building for years, and I never took the time to know him. I never even learned his name until yesterday, and that was wrong. That was a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry." Emery processed this with that particular seriousness children had when adults told them difficult things. "Why didn't you know him?" "Because I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at the wrong things. I thought being successful meant being busy and important, and—" Miranda stopped, realizing she was explaining her life philosophy to a 4th grader. "I forgot that people matter more than anything else, and your dad reminded me of that." "By saving your life?" "By being willing to risk his own. Not many people would do that, Emery. Your dad is special." "I know." Emery's voice was very small. "He's my dad." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the machines, watching Evan breathe. "Ms. Cole?" Emery said. "Yes?" "If my dad dies, it's because of your company, isn't it?" The question was devastating in its simplicity, and it deserved truth. "Yes," Miranda said. "Not directly. But the man who hurt your father, he was hurt by my company first, by decisions I made, by a culture I built where people felt invisible and unimportant. So yes, Emery, this is my responsibility." Emery's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want my dad to die because of grown-up stuff he didn't even do." "He's not going to die." Miranda moved closer, put her hand gently on Emery's shoulder. "But I promise you something right now. I promise that I'm going to change things. I'm going to make sure that what happened to the man who hurt your father never happens to anyone else. Your dad's sacrifice, it's going to mean something. It's going to change everything." "Promise?" "I promise." Emery studied her for a long moment with those 2 old eyes, eyes that had already seen her mother die, and now might lose her father too. Then she said something that broke Miranda completely. "My dad told me that promises are like heroes. They're only real if you keep them." Miranda wiped her eyes. "Your dad is a very wise man." "I know. That's why I need him to wake up. I have so many questions." "Like what?" "Like why being a hero makes you bleed, and if it's worth it, and—" Emery's voice dropped to a whisper. "And how I'm supposed to be brave enough to be like him when I'm just a kid and I'm so scared." Miranda pulled Emery into a hug, this little girl she'd just met, and felt the child's tears soak into her shoulder. "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave," she said quietly. "Being brave means being scared and doing the right thing anyway, just like your dad did." They stayed like that until Gloria returned with a bagel and orange juice that Emery picked at without enthusiasm. Gloria raised an eyebrow at Miranda but didn't say anything, just settled back into her chair and resumed her vigil. Miranda stood to leave. "Thank you for letting me sit with them." Thank you for not lying to her, Gloria said. She's had enough lies. Mrs. Merrick, if there's anything you need, anything at all, please call me. Miranda pulled out a business card, wrote her personal cell on the back. Money, resources, the best doctors, anything. I owe your son everything. Gloria took the card. What we need is for him to wake up. I know. I'll go. I shouldn't be here. This is family time. She made it to the door before Evan's monitor started beeping differently. Not the steady rhythm from before. Something changing. Gloria was on her feet instantly. What's... The beeping became more insistent. Emery gasped. Daddy? A nurse rushed in, checked the monitors, and smiled. It's okay. It's good. He's waking up. Miranda froze in the doorway, watched as the nurse spoke to Evan in that particular voice healthcare workers used for emerging patients. Mr. Merrick, can you hear me? You're in the hospital. You're safe. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Evan's fingers twitched. Emery made a sound between a sob and a laugh. Daddy! Evan's eyes moved beneath his lids. Then, slowly, they opened. The confusion was immediate. That particular disorientation of waking up somewhere unexpected, in pain, with no memory of how you got there. His eyes swept the room, monitors, IV, bandages, his mother, his daughter, nurses. And finally, standing in the doorway, Miranda Cole. Recognition flickered in his eyes, then memory, then understanding. You're alive, he said, his voice rough from intubation and medication. Of all the things he could have said, why am I here? What happened? Am I okay? His first words were about someone else. Miranda felt something crack in her chest. So are you, she managed. Thanks to Dr. Okonkwo and thanks to you being too stubborn to die. Evan tried to smile. It came out more like a grimace. Stubborn? Yeah, that's... He looked at Emery, and his entire expression changed, softened. Hey, baby girl, why aren't you in school? Emery launched herself at the bed. Gloria caught her just in time. Careful, honey, your dad's hurt. I don't care. Emery was crying and laughing simultaneously. Daddy, you scared me so much. I'm sorry. Evan reached for her hand with his good arm. I'm okay. I'm right here. You got shot. The lady said you jumped in front of a bullet. Emery's voice rose. Why would you do that? Evan looked at his daughter, this brave little girl who'd already lost too much in her short life, and gave her the only answer that mattered. Because that's what heroes do, Em. They protect people. But what about protecting yourself? What about protecting me? The words burst out of Emery like they'd been building pressure for hours. What if you died? What if you died and I didn't have anyone? Gloria spoke gently. You'd have me, sweetheart. But I want my dad. Emery was fully crying now. I want my dad and my mom, and I want everyone to stop leaving me. The room went silent except for the machines and Emery's sobs. Evan pulled his daughter closer despite the pain it must have caused. I'm not leaving you. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. But you promised that about Mom, too, and she... I know. Evan's voice broke. I know, baby, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but this is different. I'm going to be okay. Look at me. I'm awake. I'm talking. In a few weeks, I'll be pestering you about homework again. Emery hiccuped a laugh through her tears. That's not funny. Little bit funny. Gloria wiped her own eyes and looked at Miranda. We should give them some privacy. Miranda nodded, starting to back out, but Evan's voice stopped her. Ms. Cole. She turned. Yes? Evan's expression was difficult to read, exhausted, medicated, but somehow still clear-eyed and present. The man who shot me. David Hutchins. Is he... Did anyone else get hurt? Of course. Of course his first question after checking on his daughter was about other people. No one else was hurt. David's in custody. He's... Miranda paused. He's facing charges, but I'm working with the DA's office to get him help instead of just punishment. Mental health treatment, job placement assistance when he's ready. He was broken, Mr. Merrick. Our company broke him, and I'm going to fix that. Evan studied her for a long moment. Good. He's not a bad person, just a hurt one. Not everyone would be that generous. He shot you. Yeah, well, Evan winced, shifting slightly in the bed. Hurt people hurt people. I've seen it enough times to know that punishment doesn't heal wounds. Help does. Miranda felt tears threatening again. You're remarkable. You know that? I'm a janitor who got shot. Not that remarkable. That's where you're wrong. Miranda stepped closer to the bed. Mr. Merrick, Evan, I need to tell you something. 6 years ago, there was an explosion at a chemical plant in New Jersey. You pulled 8 people out. One of them was my father. Evan's eyes widened slightly. Cole. Gregory Cole. That was my father. Yes. Miranda pulled out the article, handed it to him. I never got to thank you. We never knew your name. And then you were working in my building for years, and I walked past you every day and never saw you. Never thanked you for saving my father's life. Never thanked you for being the kind of person who runs into burning buildings for strangers. Evan looked at the article, then back at Miranda. You don't need to thank me. Don't say you were just doing your job, Miranda interrupted. You saved my father's life, and then yesterday, you saved mine. Evan, you're a hero, a real hero, and I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure everyone knows it. I don't want... Evan stopped, closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they were serious. I don't want publicity or recognition or any of that. I just want to do my job and take care of my daughter. That's it. Your job? Gloria interjected, her voice sharp. Evan, you were shot. You nearly died. You can't just go back to mopping floors like nothing happened. It's a good job, Mom. It pays the bills. It gives Emery stability. It pays $16 an hour. Gloria's voice rose. That's not enough. It's never been enough. You're qualified for so much more, but you insist on being there for my daughter. Evan's voice was firm despite his obvious exhaustion. On having regular hours and weekends off and a life that doesn't involve deployments or trauma or... He stopped, looked at Emery. Em, honey, can you go with Grandma and get some breakfast? I need to talk to Ms. Cole for a minute. Emery looked suspicious. About what? Adult stuff, boring adult stuff. I promise I'll still be here when you get back. You better be. Emery kissed his cheek, careful of the bandages, and let Gloria lead her out. Once they were alone, Evan turned to Miranda. Please don't make this into something it's not. I did what anyone would do in that situation. That's demonstrably false. There were 12 other people in that room. Only one of them threw himself in front of a bullet. Because I had training, because I've been in combat situations, and I know how to react when... Evan stopped, took a breath. Look, I appreciate the gratitude, really, but I don't want my life to change. I like my life. I like the predictability. I like going home to my daughter every night and helping with homework and making dinner and just being normal. If this becomes a big media thing, if I become some kind of symbol, I lose that, and I can't lose that. It's all I have. Miranda sat in the chair beside his bed. What if I told you that you could keep that life, that privacy, that stability, and still be properly compensated for it? No media circus, no publicity, just a salary that reflects your qualifications and experience. I don't have qualifications for anything except combat medicine, and I can't do that anymore. Not with Emery needing consistency. You have leadership experience, crisis management, personnel oversight. Evan, you commanded medical teams in war zones. You made life and death decisions under impossible pressure. Those skills translate to a dozen different positions. Evan was quiet for a moment. What are you offering? I don't know yet, but I want to figure it out. Miranda chose her words carefully. I want to create a place where people like you aren't invisible. Where veterans and single parents and people who've been through hard things are valued, not overlooked. And I need your help to do it. Why? Because you're right about David Hutchins. He was broken by a system that treats people as disposable. And I built that system. I perpetuated it. I benefited from it. And yesterday it almost got me killed and did get you shot. That's not okay. None of it is okay. Evan studied her face. You really mean this? I do. Change is hard, especially corporate culture change. Your board won't like it. Your shareholders will push back. You'll face resistance from people who benefit from the current system. I don't care. You will when it starts costing you money. Then it costs me money. Miranda's voice was fierce. Evan, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I don't have is peace. What I don't have is the ability to look at myself in the mirror and like what I see. Yesterday, a good man nearly died because of my failure to see people as human beings. That changes. Today. Now. I don't care what it costs. Evan was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need from me? Right now? Get better. Heal. Spend time with your daughter. But when you're ready, I want to sit down and talk, really talk, about how to make Halden Financial a place where no one feels invisible, where people matter more than profits, where someone like David Hutchins gets help before he gets desperate. That's a lot of work. I know, but I have to try, for you, for David, for everyone I've failed by not seeing them. Miranda stood. I'll let you rest. But Evan, thank you. For my father, for me, for being the kind of person who makes the world better just by being in it. She made it to the door before Evan spoke again. Miss Cole? Yes? My daughter, she's watching this, watching how I handle it. She's trying to understand what being a hero means, what sacrifice looks like. And I need her to see that it means something, that it wasn't just random violence, that good things can come from bad situations. They will, Miranda promised. I swear to you, they will. She left the hospital as the morning shifted toward afternoon, the city alive with traffic and noise and millions of people rushing to places they needed to be. Miranda walked past them all, pulled out her phone, and made a call. This is Miranda Cole. I need to schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. No, it can't wait. Tell them, she paused. Tell them everything is about to change. The boardroom on the 42nd floor had been cleaned, the blood scrubbed from marble floors that now gleamed under recessed lighting as if nothing had happened. But the ghost of violence lingered in the way people avoided certain spots, in the way executives entered with visible tension, in the way 12 leather chairs sat empty while their occupants gathered in uncomfortable clusters near the windows. Miranda arrived 15 minutes early, which meant she was there to watch them come in one by one. Michael Torres, the CFO, looking like he hadn't slept. Janice Hammond, pale and jumpy, flinching at sudden sounds. The others, VPs of operations, marketing, legal, human resources, all carrying the particular exhaustion of people who'd witnessed something that fundamentally altered their understanding of their own safety. Robert Chen, the chairman of the board and her father's oldest friend, was already seated at the head of the table. At 71, Robert had the kind of authority that came from decades of building empires and surviving recessions. He looked at Miranda with something between concern and wariness. Miranda, he said as she took her seat, are you sure you're ready for this? No one would fault you for taking time after. I'm fine, Robert. Miranda set down her tablet with deliberate care. And we need to have this conversation now, not later. The board is concerned about optics, about liability, about profits, Miranda finished. I know, but today we're going to talk about people. Robert's expression shifted. Miranda. The rest of the board members took their seats, and Miranda waited until everyone was settled before she stood. She'd prepared remarks, bullet points, a careful presentation designed to guide them toward her conclusions. But standing there, looking at these people who'd witnessed a man nearly die because someone else had been broken by their policies, she abandoned all of it. 3 days ago, she began, her voice steady, a janitor named Evan Merrick saved my life by throwing himself in front of a bullet. He's currently in Mount Sinai West, recovering from surgery that removed that bullet from his chest. He has a 9-year-old daughter who spent the night terrified she'd lose her father the same way she lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago. And he did this, risked everything, for a woman who walked past him every day for 6 years without learning his name. The room was absolutely silent. But here's what I learned in the hospital, Miranda continued. Evan Merrick isn't just a janitor. He's a decorated Navy combat medic, Navy Cross, 2 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star with Valor. He saved lives in Fallujah and Kandahar, and she pulled out the article, held it up. And in March 2013, at a chemical plant in New Jersey, where he pulled 8 people from a burning building, one of those people was my father. Robert went pale. What? My father, the man who built this company, who taught me everything about business and nothing about seeing people as human beings. Evan Merrick saved his life 6 years ago, and we never knew, never thanked him. And when he applied to work here, looking for stability to raise his daughter, we gave him a mop and $16 an hour and made him invisible. Miranda, where is this going? Michael asked carefully. It's going exactly where you're afraid it's going. Miranda looked at each of them in turn. David Hutchins, the man who brought a gun into this boardroom, worked for this company for 15 years. 15 years of missed birthdays and sacrificed weekends and killing himself to meet quotas. And then we terminated him with a severance package that didn't cover 2 months of mortgage. We broke him. And when broken people have nothing left to lose, they do desperate things. That's not our responsibility, one of the VPs said. We can't be held accountable for every employee's, can't we? Miranda's voice cut across the room. We create the culture. We set the policies. We decide how people are treated, what they're paid, how they're valued. We built a machine that treats human beings as interchangeable parts. And then we act surprised when one of those parts breaks badly enough to hurt people. That ends today. Robert leaned forward. Miranda, I understand you're traumatized. What you went through was, don't patronize me, Robert. The steel in her voice was familiar, but the emotion beneath it was new. I'm not traumatized. I'm awake. For the first time in my career, I'm actually seeing clearly, and what I see is a company that's lost its soul, if it ever had one. Careful, Robert warned. This company is your father's legacy. My father's legacy is being kept alive by a man he doesn't even remember, a man who's lying in a hospital bed right now because our culture created a monster. Miranda pulled up a presentation on the screen, not the one she'd planned, but one she'd built at 4 a.m. in her penthouse. This is David Hutchins' employment record, exemplary performance reviews, consistent overtime, never missed a deadline, and then she clicked to the next slide. Market downturn, restructuring, his entire department eliminated to boost quarterly earnings by 3%. 3%. The numbers hung in the air, damning in their smallness. We destroyed a man's life for 3%, Miranda said quietly. And we did it to 247 other people that quarter alone. I have all their names, all their stories, single parents, people supporting elderly relatives, people who'd given us decades of loyalty. And we cut them loose because it looked good on a spreadsheet. Janice Hammond spoke up, her voice shaky. What do you want us to do, Miranda? We can't undo those decisions. No, but we can make sure they never happen again. Miranda clicked to the next slide. I'm proposing the Merrick Initiative, named after the man who showed us what real courage looks like. It's a comprehensive program that restructures how we treat employees, all employees, from the C-suite to custodial staff. The slide filled with bullet points that made the CFO visibly pale. Increased minimum wage to $25 an hour. Expanded mental health benefits. Mandatory transition support for any terminated employee, including 6 months of salary continuation and job placement assistance. Veteran hiring and support programs. An ombudsman office for employee concerns. Anonymous culture surveys with public results. This will cost us millions, Michael said, his voice strained. $47 million in the first year, Miranda agreed. I've run the numbers, and it's worth every penny. Because the alternative is more David Hutchins sees, more desperate people, more violence, more trauma, more funerals. She paused. More blood on floors we pretend we've cleaned. The shareholders will revolt, someone muttered. Let them. Miranda's voice was sharp. I own 38% of this company. Robert, you and the other founders own another 23%. If we stand united, we have controlling interest. The shareholders can complain all they want. Robert was studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Your father would have fought this, you know that. My father was saved by Evan Merrick and didn't bother to learn his name. Maybe he was wrong about more than just that. The words felt like treason and truth simultaneously. Robert, you were at the plant that day. You were one of the 8 people Evan pulled out. Don't you think we owe him better than this? Robert's face went through several emotions. Then he closed his eyes briefly. I remember the smoke. Remember someone grabbing my arm, pulling me through fire. I couldn't see his face, could barely breathe, but he kept saying, stay with me, and his voice cracked. I never knew who he was, never thought to find out, just was grateful to be alive. That's what I thought too, Miranda said softly, until I realized gratitude without action is just guilt in disguise. The room fell silent for a long moment. Then Robert straightened his shoulders and looked at the rest of the board. I'm voting yes on the Merrick Initiative, all of it. Who's with me? One by one, hands rose. Some enthusiastic, some reluctant, but rising nonetheless. Michael Torres was the last. This is going to change everything, he said. Good, Miranda replied. That's exactly the point. The meeting lasted another 3 hours as they hammered out details, debated implementation timelines, and drafted communication strategies. But the core decision was made. Halden Financial Corporation was going to change, whether it wanted to or not. As people filed out, Robert approached Miranda. Your father would be proud, even if he'd fight every word of it. You think so? I know so. Because the man I knew, before the empire, before the money, he cared about people. Somewhere along the way, we all forgot that. Maybe it takes almost dying to remember. Robert paused. Have you told Mr. Merrick about this? Not yet. He needs to heal first, but when he's ready, I want him involved in building this program. He understands what people need in a way I never will. Smart. Robert headed for the door, then stopped. Miranda? Thank you for having the courage to do this. After he left, Miranda stood alone in the boardroom where she'd nearly died, where Evan Merrick had sacrificed himself for a stranger, where everything had changed in the span of a heartbeat. She pulled out her phone and called the hospital. Mount Sinai West, ICU. This is Miranda Cole. I'm calling to check on Evan Merrick's condition. Are you family? No, but then I can't release information. Hospital policy. Miranda closed her eyes. Can you just tell him? Tell him it worked. Tell him his sacrifice mattered. Tell him things are going to change. There was a pause. Then the nurse said more gently, I'll make sure he gets the message. At the hospital, Evan was awake and arguing with his mother about soup. I don't want soup, Mom. I want real food. The doctor said clear liquids for another day. Soup is clear liquid. This is broth with 3 noodles. That's not soup. That's an insult to soup. Gloria Merrick smiled despite herself. If her son was complaining about food, he was going to be fine. Eat your insult soup and be grateful you're alive to complain about it. Emery was curled up in the chair doing homework, or pretending to do homework while actually just watching her father breathe, as if she needed constant confirmation that he was real and present and not leaving her. She'd barely left his side in 3 days, sleeping in the hospital chair, eating cafeteria food, refusing to go home even when Gloria begged her to rest properly. Evan said gently, you need to go to school tomorrow. You're missing too much. I don't care about school. Yes, you do. You love school, and your teachers are going to think I'm raising a delinquent if you keep skipping. I can't leave you. What if... Emery's voice dropped. What if something happens and I'm not here? Evan held out his hand and she took it immediately. Nothing's going to happen. Look at me. I'm bored. I'm arguing about soup. I'm so okay that the nurses are probably going to kick me out soon just to get rid of me. Dr. Okonkwo said minimum 5 days, Gloria interjected. And that's if there are no complications. See? 5 days. I'm not going anywhere. Evan squeezed Emery's hand. But you need routine. You need normal. That's important. Nothing feels normal anymore. The simple honesty of it broke something in Evan's chest. He pulled her closer, careful of his IV and bandages and various medical attachments. I know, baby. I know. But that's how we get through hard things. We do the normal stuff even when it feels impossible. We get up, we go to school, we do our homework, we eat dinner. And slowly, day by day, normal becomes real again. Is that what you did? After Mom died? The question hung in the air. Gloria looked away, her own eyes wet. Yeah, Evan said quietly. That's what I did. Some days I didn't think I could, didn't want to, but then I'd look at you and think, she needs breakfast, she needs her lunch packed, She needs someone to braid her hair, and I do those things. And eventually, doing those things didn't hurt quite as much. Does it still hurt? Every day. But it's a different kind of hurt now. Not the sharp kind that makes you want to stop breathing, more like an ache, like a scar that reminds you someone was there and mattered. Emery was quiet for a moment. I don't want a scar from you. You won't have one. I'm not going anywhere, Em. I promise. You can't promise that. Anything can happen. You're right. I can't control everything, but I can promise that I'll fight like hell to stay here with you. And I can promise that what I did, saving Miss Cole, I'd do again. Because that's who I need to be for you. Someone who helps people even when it's hard. But what if helping people takes you away from me? Evan didn't have a good answer for that. It was the question he'd been asking himself for years. How do you be the person who runs toward danger when you have someone who needs you to run home instead? Before he could respond, there was a knock on the door. A nurse poked her head in. Mr. Merrick, there's a message for you from a Miranda Cole. Evan's heart rate picked up slightly. The monitor beeped faster. What's the message? He asked. The nurse smiled. She said to tell you it worked. Your sacrifice mattered. Things are going to change. She sounded pretty emotional about it. After the nurse left, Gloria looked at her son. What does that mean? It means maybe good things can come from bad situations after all. Evan settled back against his pillows, suddenly exhausted. Or it means I'm getting fired for making the company look bad. One or the other. You're not getting fired, Gloria said firmly. That woman looked at you like you'd hung the moon. Whatever she's planning, it's not firing you. Maybe she's planning to give you a medal, Emery suggested. That would be cool. Then I could bring it to show and tell. I don't want a medal, Em. What do you want? It was such a simple question. What do you want? When was the last time anyone had asked him that? When was the last time he'd asked himself? I want you to be happy, he said finally. I want to give you a good life. I want to be home for dinner and help with homework and watch you grow up into the amazing person you're already becoming. That's it. That's all I want. That's a lot, Gloria said softly. Yeah, but it's the only thing that matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the three of them, this little family that had survived so much and was learning to survive more. Outside the window, the city moved on, people rushing to appointments, living lives, chasing dreams and dollars and destinies. But in room 3 of the ICU, time felt different, slower, more precious. Emery eventually dozed off in her chair, homework abandoned on her lap. Gloria stroked her granddaughter's hair and looked at her son. You scared me, she said quietly. When that nurse called and said you'd been shot, I thought, her voice broke. I thought I'd lost you. After your father, after Sarah, I thought I couldn't survive losing you too. I'm sorry, Mom. Don't apologize for being a hero. Just promise me you'll be more careful about it going forward. Evan smiled despite the pain. I'll try, but careful isn't really in the job description. Then maybe you need a different job, one that doesn't involve bullets. Gloria's voice was firm. I know you love helping people. I know it's who you are. But Emery needs you alive more than strangers need you dead. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. Your daughter losing both parents before she's 10 isn't fair. You having to choose between being a hero and being a father isn't fair. But here we are, and someone has to say the hard things. So I'm saying them. Evan looked at his daughter sleeping, her small hand still reaching toward him even in sleep, and felt the weight of impossible choices. How do you tell a child that courage sometimes costs everything? How do you model heroism while also modeling caution? How do you be the person who saves lives without risking the one life that depends on you most? I don't know how to be both, he admitted quietly. The man who runs toward danger, and the man who comes home safe. I don't know how to reconcile those things. You learn, you adapt, you make different choices. Gloria's voice softened. Evan, you've spent 20 years in uniform taking care of other people. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you for once. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I don't have the luxury of being taken care of. Then let me help more. Let friends help. Gloria hesitated. Let Ms. Cole help. If she's serious about whatever she's planning. You don't have to do everything alone. I'm not alone. I have you and Em. You know what I mean? You've built walls, Evan. High ones. Ever since Sarah died, you've been so focused on protecting Emery that you forgot you're allowed to need things too. Want things. Accept help from people. Evan closed his eyes. His mother wasn't wrong. After Sarah's death, he'd become Fortress Evan. Walls up, emotions locked down, focused solely on survival and stability for his daughter. The Navy had taught him to compartmentalize, to push through pain, to complete the mission at all costs. But maybe that wasn't the mission anymore. Maybe the mission now was teaching Emery how to live, not just survive. What if I don't know how? He asked, voice barely audible. Then you learn. Same way you learned everything else. One day at a time. The conversation was interrupted by Dr. Okonkwo making evening rounds. She examined Evan with efficient thoroughness, checking bandages, listening to his breathing, asking about pain levels and mobility. You're healing well, she announced. Better than expected, actually. That combat conditioning is doing you favors. If you continue at this rate, we might discharge you in 4 days instead of 5. Can I go home today? Evan asked hopefully. Absolutely not. You were shot in the chest 3 days ago. The bullet nicked a major artery. You coded twice on my table. You're staying until I'm sure you won't die the minute you leave my care. Fair point, Dr. Okonkwo smiled. Besides, you're something of a celebrity around here. The nurses are fighting over who gets to take care of the hero janitor. You've inspired an entire hospital. I'm not a hero. I just did what needed doing. That's exactly what makes you a hero, Mr. Merrick. Real heroes never think they're heroes. They just think they're doing their job. She made notes on her tablet. That Ms. Cole has called 4 times today, checking on you. She's persistent. She feels guilty. She should. But I think it's more than guilt. I've seen a lot of people in this hospital after traumatic events. Most of them process it and move on. She's processing it and trying to change the world. There's a difference. After Dr. Okonkwo left, Evan lay in the dimming room watching shadows lengthen across the walls. His chest ached, both from the bullet wound and from something deeper, something that had been building since the moment he'd seen David Hutchins with that gun. He'd spent 6 years trying to be invisible, trying to be normal, trying to pretend that the decorated combat medic was someone else, someone from his past, someone he didn't have to be anymore. But invisibility was its own kind of death, a slow suffocation of everything that made you who you were. Maybe Miranda Cole was right. Maybe it was time for things to change. Not just at Halden Financial, but in his own life. Maybe teaching Emery about courage meant showing her that you didn't have to hide who you were to be safe. That being seen, truly seen, wasn't a weakness but a strength. His phone buzzed with a text. He reached for it carefully, mindful of the IV in his arm. The message was from an unknown number. Mr. Merrick, this is Miranda Cole. I apologize for texting your personal number. Your mother gave it to me in case of emergency. I wanted you to know that the board approved significant changes today. Changes that will ensure what happened to David Hutchins never happens to anyone else. I know you value privacy and stability, but when you're ready, I'd like to discuss your role in implementing these changes. No pressure, just possibility. Get well. You've given us all a second chance. I hope you'll let me give you one too. Evan read the message 3 times. Then he showed it to his mother. Gloria smiled. Told you. That woman's planning something big. I don't want big. I want small and safe and predictable. Maybe. But maybe you also want to matter, to be seen, to use all that training and experience for something more than mopping floors. There's honor in mopping floors. There is. But there's also honor in being who you actually are instead of who you think you need to be. Evan looked at Emery still sleeping, still reaching for him. What kind of example was he setting? What lessons was she learning from his choices? He thought about the morning of the shooting when she'd asked him what a hero was. He'd deflected, minimized, made it abstract. But she deserved better than deflection. She deserved to see what real courage looked like. Not just running toward danger, but running toward truth, toward authenticity, toward becoming the fullest version of yourself even when it scared you. I'll think about it, he told his mother. That's all I ask. But as night settled over the hospital and the city beyond, Evan Merrick found himself doing more than thinking. He was remembering what it felt like to be someone who mattered, someone who made a difference, someone who was seen. And for the first time in 6 years, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, being invisible wasn't the only way to be safe. Maybe being seen, truly seen, was the bravest thing of all. Evan was discharged on a Tuesday morning, exactly 5 days after the shooting. Dr. Okonkwo signed the paperwork with a warning that sounded more like a threat wrapped in medical terminology. You push yourself too hard, those stitches open up, and you're back here getting an infection that makes a bullet wound look pleasant. Understood? Understood, Evan agreed, already planning to ignore at least half of her restrictions. I mean it, Mr. Merrick. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity, no playing superhero for at least 6 weeks. Your body needs time to heal internally, even if you feel fine externally. Gloria, standing beside him with his discharge papers and a bag of medications, nodded firmly. I'll make sure he behaves. Good luck with that, Dr. Okonkwo said with a knowing smile. Combat medics make the worst patients. They think knowing medicine means they can ignore it. She wasn't wrong. Evan already felt restless and confined after 5 days of hospital beds and limited mobility. His chest ached with every breath, his shoulder was stiff from immobility, and he had another 3 weeks before the stitches came out. But he was alive. He was going home. And most importantly, he was going home to Emory. His daughter had gone to school that morning, her first day back since the shooting, and Evan had promised to be there when she got home. The thought of seeing her walk through their apartment door, knowing he'd kept that promise, made the pain almost bearable. The discharge process took another hour of paperwork and instructions and pharmacy coordination. When they finally made it to the hospital entrance, a black car was waiting at the curb. Did you call a car service? Evan asked his mother. No, The driver's door opened and Miranda Cole stepped out. Evan stopped so abruptly that Gloria nearly walked into him. Ms. Cole, he said, genuinely surprised. What are you? I promised your mother I'd provide transportation home, Miranda said, her tone professional but her expression uncertain, as if she wasn't sure how this gesture would be received. If that's acceptable. If not, I can call you a regular car service, or… It's fine, Gloria interrupted, already moving toward the car. It's very kind. Evan, stop standing there looking shocked, and get in the vehicle before you strain something. The car was exactly what Evan expected from a CEO. Pristine leather seats, tinted windows, probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. He settled carefully into the back seat, moving slowly to avoid jostling his injuries, and tried not to think about how out of place he felt in this environment. Miranda slid in beside him while Gloria took the front passenger seat. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic, and for a moment no one spoke. You didn't have to do this, Evan said finally. I know, but I wanted to. Miranda paused, choosing words carefully. I wanted to talk to you. About what happened at the board meeting, about what comes next. Ms. Cole, I just got out of the hospital. Can we maybe have this conversation when I'm not actively on painkillers? Of course, I'm sorry, She stopped, took a breath. I'm not very good at this. The personal stuff. The human stuff. My entire career has been about efficiency and results, and I'm realizing that approach doesn't work when you're trying to thank someone for saving your life. Gloria turned around from the front seat. Maybe start with the simple version. What did you want to tell him? Miranda looked grateful for the guidance. The board approved the Merrick Initiative, all of it. Increased wages, mental health support, transition assistance for terminated employees, veteran hiring programs, everything. It goes into effect in 2 weeks. Evan processed this slowly. You named it after me? After what you represent. Courage, sacrifice. The kind of person who sees problems and fixes them instead of ignoring them. Miranda pulled out a tablet, called up a presentation. But here's the thing. I need help implementing it. I need someone who understands what veterans need when they transition to civilian life. Someone who knows what it's like to be overlooked and undervalued. Someone who got shot because your company broke someone, Evan interrupted gently. Ms. Cole, I appreciate what you're trying to do. Really, but I can't be your poster child for corporate redemption. That's not what I'm asking. Isn't it? Miranda was quiet for a moment. Maybe it started that way. Maybe part of me thought, let's hire the hero and everyone will see we've changed. But the more I learned about you, your service record, your medical expertise, your leadership experience, the more I realized you're actually qualified for this. Not because you got shot, because you spent 20 years taking care of people under impossible circumstances. I mopped floors for 6 years. That's not exactly executive material. You commanded trauma teams in combat zones, Miranda countered. You made life and death decisions with seconds to act. You trained personnel, managed resources, adapted to constantly changing situations. Those skills don't disappear just because you changed careers. Evan looked out the window at the city passing by. What exactly are you offering? Director of Veteran Services and Employee Wellness. You'd build and oversee the entire program, hire your own team, set your own policies, report directly to me, which means you'd have authority to make real changes without bureaucratic obstacles. Starting salary is $175,000, full benefits, flexible schedule, so you can still be there for Emery. The number hit Evan like a second bullet. $175,000. That was more than 10 times what he'd been making as a janitor. That was stability. That was Emery's college fund. That was not worrying about every unexpected expense. That was also terrifying. I don't have a business degree, he said. I don't have corporate experience. I don't even own a suit that fits anymore. We'll get you a suit, several suits, and you have something better than a business degree. You have lived experience. You know what it's like to serve and sacrifice. You know what veterans need because you are one. You know what it's like to feel invisible because we made you invisible. Miranda's voice intensified. Evan, I can hire a dozen consultants with MBAs who'll tell me what the research says. What I need is someone who can tell me what's true, what actually helps, what actually matters. Gloria spoke up from the front seat. Evan, say yes. Mom, say yes. You've spent 6 years making yourself small, making yourself safe. And I understand why. You were protecting Emery, protecting yourself, protecting what's left of this family. But baby, you're not meant to be small. You're meant to be exactly who you are. Someone who leads, someone who helps, someone who changes things. What if I fail? What if you don't? Gloria turned to face him fully. What if you take this chance and you're exactly as good at it as Ms. Cole thinks you are? What if you build something that helps thousands of people? What if Emery gets to see her father using all those gifts and skills instead of hiding them? Evan looked at Miranda. Why does this matter so much to you? And don't say guilt. I need the real answer. Miranda was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was raw with emotion. Because I've spent 15 years building an empire and it's empty. It's impressive and profitable and completely hollow. And then you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. Not because I deserved it, but because that's who you are. Someone who sees a person in danger and acts. And I realized that's what I want to be. Not someone who maximizes shareholder value. Someone who actually matters. Someone who makes the world better just by being in it. She paused, then continued. But I can't do it alone. I don't know how. I've spent my entire adult life learning how to be ruthless and efficient. I need someone to teach me how to be human again, how to see people, how to build something that actually helps instead of just extracts value. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. I know, but I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking you to help me fix what we built together, this culture, this system, this company. You have insights I'll never have, experiences I'll never understand. And if we're serious about making Halden Financial a place where people matter, I need your voice in the room where decisions get made. The car pulled up in front of Evan's apartment building, a modest 3-story walk-up in Queens, worlds away from Miranda's penthouse. The driver put the car in park and waited. Can I think about it? Evan asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Evan, Miranda pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my personal cell. If you have questions, concerns, ideas, anything, call me, day or night. I mean that. Evan took the card. Ms. Cole? Miranda, please. I think we're past formalities. Miranda, thank you for the offer, for caring, for trying to change things. It means more than you know. He got out of the car carefully, Gloria helping him navigate the movement without straining his stitches. As they walked toward the building entrance, Miranda rolled down the window. "Mr. Merrick." "One more thing." Evan turned back. "Your daughter, Emery. She came to the hospital every day you were there, and she told me something I can't stop thinking about. She said promises are like heroes. They're only real if you keep them. That's wisdom most adults never learn. You're raising an extraordinary person." "I'm trying." "You're succeeding, and whatever you decide about the job, I hope you'll let me help support that. Because good fathers shouldn't have to choose between providing for their families and being present for them. That's not a choice anyone should have to make." The window rolled up and the car pulled away, leaving Evan standing on the sidewalk with his mother, processing everything that had just happened. "She's right, you know," Gloria said as they climbed the stairs to the second floor. "You are raising an extraordinary person, and she deserves to see her father be extraordinary too." "I'm not extraordinary, Mom. I'm just a guy who did what anyone would do." "That's where you're wrong, baby. Most people wouldn't. Most people would run away or freeze or let someone else handle it. You ran toward danger. You always have. That's not ordinary. That's exceptional." Inside the apartment, everything was exactly as Evan had left it 5 days ago. Dishes in the sink from his last morning coffee, Emery's homework on the kitchen table. The particular kind of organized chaos that came from single parents trying to keep everything together. It felt simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar, like coming home after a long deployment. Gloria helped him settle on the couch with pillows supporting his injured side. She'd taken the week off from her job at the library to help with his recovery, and with Emery, and Evan felt the familiar guilt of needing assistance mixing with gratitude for having someone who cared enough to offer it. "I'm going to make tea," Gloria announced, "and you're going to rest. And when Emery gets home, we're going to have a family meeting about Ms. Cole's offer." "Mom, I'm not making a major life decision based on a 9-year-old's opinion." "Why not?" "She's the one most affected by it. She's the one who has to live with whatever you choose. She gets a voice." Evan knew better than to argue with his mother when she used that tone. Instead, he closed his eyes and let exhaustion take him for a while. The pain medication made everything soft and distant, and he drifted in that space between sleep and waking where thoughts became untethered from logic. He dreamed about the shooting, about David Hutchins' face, desperate and broken, about the moment he'd decided to move, that split-second calculation where training overcame instinct and he'd thrown himself toward danger instead of away from it. In the dream, Emery was there, watching, asking, "Why did you do it, Daddy?" over and over until it became a song, a rhythm, a heartbeat. He woke to the sound of the apartment door opening and Emery's voice calling, "Dad? Dad, are you home?" "I'm here," he called back, his voice rough from sleep. "On the couch." Emery appeared in the doorway, still wearing her backpack, and for a moment she just stared at him as if confirming he was real. Then she dropped the backpack and launched herself at him with the particular abandon of 9-year-olds who've forgotten that hugs can hurt. "Careful," Gloria intercepted her just in time. "Your dad's still healing, remember?" Sorry. Emery adjusted her approach, climbing carefully onto the couch and settling against Evan's good side. "I missed you." "I missed you too, baby girl. How was school?" "Weird. Everyone kept asking about you. Mrs. Patterson told the whole class that my dad was a hero, and everyone wanted to know if you really got shot, and if there was a lot of blood, and if you almost died." She paused. "Did you almost die?" Evan looked at his mother over Emery's head. Gloria nodded slightly. "Tell her the truth." "Yeah," he said quietly. "I almost died. The bullet hit something important and I lost a lot of blood. But Dr. Okonkwo is really good at her job and I am really stubborn, so I didn't die. I'm right here." "Were you scared?" "Honestly, I don't remember being scared. Everything happened really fast. I saw someone in danger and I moved. Training took over. It wasn't until later in the hospital that I got scared. Scared I might not see you again. That scared me more than the bullet." Emery was quiet for a moment, processing. "Mrs. Patterson said heroes are brave. But you just said you were scared." "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. That's what Ms. Cole said too, at the hospital." Evan raised his eyebrows. "You talked to Miss Cole?" She sat with us when Grandma went to get food. She was nice. Not like how I thought a CEO would be. She cried about you getting shot. She feels guilty. I think it's more than that. Emery looked up at him with those two wise eyes. I think she really saw you, Dad. Like, really saw you for the first time. And she realized she'd been looking through you for years, and that made her sad. Out of the mouths of babes, Evan thought. His 9-year-old daughter had articulated something it had taken him days to understand. Gloria came in with tea and cookies. Emery, honey, there's something we need to talk about as a family. Ms. Cole offered your dad a job, a really good job, and we need to discuss whether he should take it. Emery sat up straighter. What kind of job? Director of Veteran Services and Employee Wellness, Evan said, the title still feeling strange in his mouth. I'd help other veterans find jobs and get support. Make sure people at the company are treated well. Build programs that help people instead of hurting them. That sounds like a job for you. It also sounds scary. I've been mopping floors for 6 years. This would be different, important, visible. I'd have to wear suits and go to meetings and make decisions that affect thousands of people. But you made decisions that affected people before, right? In the military? That was different. How? Evan thought about it. I guess it wasn't. I guess I'm just scared I've forgotten how to be that person. Emery looked at him seriously. Dad, remember when I was scared to audition for the school play? And you told me that courage is doing the thing even when you're scared because the thing is important? I remember. Well, this is important. People need help. Veterans need help. And you know how to help them because you are one. So maybe you should be courageous. Gloria smiled into her tea. Told you we should ask her opinion. But what about you? Evan asked Emery. This job, it means I'd be working more. Not more hours necessarily, but more responsibility, more stress. What if I bring that stress home? You already brought stress home. You just hid it better. I heard you sometimes, late at night, worried about money, about bills, about how you'd pay for things. Emery's voice was small but firm. I'd rather have a dad who's stressed because he's helping people than a dad who's stressed because he's pretending to be smaller than he is. The observation hit Evan squarely in the chest, painful and true. When did you get so wise? He asked. I've always been wise. You just don't listen because I'm a kid. That's fair. They sat together for a while, this little family of 3, until Gloria stood and announced she was making dinner. Emery went to do homework, and Evan was left alone with his thoughts and Miranda's business card, and a decision that suddenly felt less impossible. He picked up his phone and dialed before he could talk himself out of it. Miranda answered on the second ring. Evan? Director of Veteran Services and Employee Wellness, that's the title? Yes. Why? Because titles matter. They tell people who you are and what you do, and that title tells people I matter, that veterans matter, that employee wellness isn't some HR checkbox but a real priority. Exactly. That's exactly right. Evan took a breath. I want 3 things before I say yes. Anything. First, I want autonomy, real autonomy. I build the program my way, using methods that actually work, without corporate interference or bureaucratic red tape. If you're hiring me for my expertise, you have to trust that expertise. Done. You report only to me, and I'll run interference with anyone who tries to micromanage you. Second, I want a team budget large enough to make real change. Not symbolic gestures, real, meaningful programs that actually help people. Name a number. $5 million annually to start. More as the program grows. Miranda didn't hesitate. Done. What's the third thing? David Hutchins, the man who shot me. I want him in the program. First participant. Full support. Mental health treatment, job training, placement assistance, the whole thing. If this program is about helping broken people, we start with the person who broke the hardest. There was a long pause. Then Miranda's voice, thick with emotion. You're serious? Completely. David didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt people. He was ground down by a system that didn't value him. If we can help him, really help him, then we prove the program works. We prove people can heal. The optics of that are complicated. I don't care about optics. I care about doing what's right. David needs help, not just punishment. Are we serious about helping people or not? Another pause. You're right. You're absolutely right. I'll make it happen. Anything else? Yeah, one more thing. I want you to meet with every employee who was terminated in the last 5 years. Not send a representative, you, personally. Look them in the eye. Hear their stories. Understand what your decisions cost. That's going to be painful. Good. It should be. You need to feel it. We both do. If we're going to build something better, we have to fully understand what we broke first. Okay, I'll do it. All of it. Miranda's voice was steady. Does this mean you're accepting the position? Evan looked around his modest apartment, looked at Emery's homework spread on the table, looked at the photo on the wall, him and Sarah and baby Emery, back when the world was simpler and loss was still theoretical. Sarah was smiling in that photo, her head on his shoulder, completely unaware that cancer was already growing in her body. If she were here now, what would she tell him? She'd tell him to be brave. She'd tell him that playing small served no one. She'd tell him that Emery needed to see her father using his gifts, not hiding them. Yes, Evan said, I'm accepting the position. When do I start? Whenever you're medically cleared. Dr. Okonkwo said minimum 6 weeks of recovery, so let's say 8 weeks to be safe. That gives us time to prepare, to set up your office, to hire initial staff. And Evan? Yeah? Thank you for saying yes, for giving me a chance to help build something meaningful, for believing this can work. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see me try to navigate corporate politics in a cheap suit. Miranda laughed. A real laugh, genuine and warm. We'll get you proper suits, and you'll be fine. You commanded trauma teams under enemy fire. Board meetings are nothing compared to that. After they hung up, Evan sat in the gathering darkness of his living room, processing what he'd just agreed to. Part of him was terrified, but a larger part, the part he'd been suppressing for 6 years, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. 3 days later, Evan received a thick envelope via courier. Inside was an official offer letter, benefits package, and something else, a handwritten note from Miranda. Evan, thank you for taking this leap. I know it's scary. I know you're stepping into uncertain territory, but I believe in you, and more importantly, I believe in what we can build together. Enclosed is the first installment of a college fund for Emery. Not a bonus, not payment for services. A gift from one parent to another, because good people shouldn't have to worry about giving their children futures. You saved my life. Let me help secure hers. Miranda. The check was for $50,000. Evan stared at it for a long time. Then he called Gloria over and showed her. Oh my God, his mother breathed. That's real money. That's life-changing money. Are you going to accept it? Evan thought about pride, about independence, about the difference between charity and genuine care. He thought about Emery and the future she deserved, a future where college was possible, where opportunities weren't limited by what her father could afford, where dreams didn't die because of tuition bills. Yeah, he said finally, I'm going to accept it because she's right. Good people shouldn't have to choose between pride and their children's futures. And I'm choosing Emery, always Emery. He deposited the check the next morning and opened a dedicated college savings account. That evening, over dinner of Gloria's famous meatloaf, he told Emery about the job offer and what it meant. So you're going to be important again? She asked. I was always important. But yes, I'm going to be visible again. People will know my name, know what I do. And that means people might approach you at school, ask questions, maybe even try to take pictures or write stories. Are you okay with that? Emery considered this seriously. Will you still help with my homework? Every night. Will you still make pancakes on Sundays? Every Sunday. Then I'm okay with it, as long as you don't stop being my dad and become just some important person I don't know. Evan reached across the table and took her hand. That will never happen, I promise. You're my priority. Always. Everything else comes second. Okay then, you should take the job. And Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you for being brave enough to be you again. The words broke something open in Evan's chest, something that had been locked tight since Sarah's death, since his decision to become invisible, since he'd started believing that safety meant smallness. He pulled Emery into a hug and let himself believe, just for a moment, that maybe she was right. Maybe being brave enough to be yourself was the ultimate act of heroism. Maybe the shot that changed everything hadn't just saved Miranda Cole's life. Maybe it had saved his too. 1 year later, the lobby of Halden Financial Tower looked the same, but felt entirely different. The marble floors still gleamed under designer lighting. The security desk still stood guard at the entrance. The elevators still carried people to their various floors with mechanical efficiency. But something fundamental had shifted in the building's atmosphere. Something you could feel the moment you walked through those glass doors. People smiled more. They made eye contact. They stopped to hold doors for each other, to ask how someone's day was going, to treat janitors and security guards and mail clerks with the same courtesy they showed executives. The transformation hadn't been instant or easy, but it had been real. Evan Merrick stood in that lobby on a Wednesday morning, watching employees arrive for work, and marveled at how much had changed. He wore a tailored navy suit, one of 6 Miranda had insisted on buying him, claiming that directors needed to look the part even if they didn't feel it. His chest still twinged sometimes where the bullet had carved its path, a permanent reminder of the day everything shifted, but mostly he felt good, strong, present, purposeful. "Mr. Merrick!" He turned to see Susan Chen, the executive floor receptionist who'd been there the day of the shooting, hurrying toward him with a clipboard and an anxious expression. "The setup crew just finished in the auditorium," she said. "Mrs. Cole wants you to do a final walkthrough before people start arriving. Also, your mother called. She and Emery are running 15 minutes late because of traffic. That's fine. The event doesn't start for another hour. Tell her no rush." Evan smiled at Susan. "How are you doing? I know today might bring up some difficult memories." Susan's expression softened. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I've been seeing that therapist the company provides. Did you know we have those now? Free mental health services for all employees? That's because of you, Mr. Merrick. That's your program. It's all of our program. I just helped build the framework. Don't be modest. Everyone knows you're the reason things changed around here." Susan glanced around, lowered her voice. "There's a betting pool in accounting about how long until you get promoted again. Current odds favor you making VP within 2 years. Evan laughed. "Tell accounting to save their money. I'm exactly where I want to be." And it was true. The past year had been the most challenging and rewarding of his life since leaving the military. He'd built the Veteran Services and Employee Wellness program from nothing, hired a team of 15 specialists, created comprehensive mental health support, established job training partnerships with 3 major universities, placed over 200 veterans in meaningful employment, and fundamentally restructured how Halden Financial treated its employees. The numbers were impressive, but the stories were what mattered. The single mother who'd been promoted from the mailroom to project management after the company invested in her education. The veteran with PTSD who'd found purpose and stability in the IT department after receiving proper treatment and support. The dozens of employees who'd privately thanked Evan for creating a workplace where they felt valued as human beings, not just assets on a balance sheet. And David Hutchins. David had been the hardest and most important case. Getting him released from custody had required legal maneuvering, psychiatric evaluations, and Miranda personally vouching for his rehabilitation. But now, a year later, David worked in the company's community outreach division, helping other struggling employees navigate resources and support systems. He and Evan met for coffee every Thursday morning, 2 broken men who'd found healing in purpose and second chances. "You ready for today?" a familiar voice asked. Evan turned to see Miranda approaching from the executive elevators. She looked different than she had a year ago, softer somehow, more human, though she'd lost none of her commanding presence. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his first car, but she'd paired it with comfortable flats instead of stilettos, a small concession to practicality over power that the old Miranda would never have made. "Ready as I'll ever be," Evan said, "though I still think this is too much." "It's not nearly enough. But it's a start." Miranda gestured toward the auditorium. "Shall we?" They walked together through the lobby, and Evan noticed how employees reacted to Miranda now. There was still respect, still recognition of her authority, but the fear was gone. People greeted her warmly. She knew their names, asked about their families, remembered details from previous conversations. The Ice Queen had melted, revealing the human being underneath. The auditorium had been transformed for Family Appreciation Day, an event Evan had proposed 6 months earlier as a way to honor the families who supported Halden Financial employees. The space was decorated with photos submitted by employees, kids at soccer games, partners at weddings, elderly parents being cared for, pets wearing ridiculous costumes, all the beautiful chaos of real human lives happening outside corporate walls. But the centerpiece was what made Evan's throat tight. Against the far wall, mounted on dark wood and surrounded by soft lighting, was a bronze plaque. Above it, etched in elegant lettering, in honor of those who serve without being seen. And below the words, a photograph. Evan in his Navy uniform, younger and unwounded, standing with his trauma team somewhere in Afghanistan. He remembered when that photo was taken, just hours after they'd saved 3 Marines from a vehicle explosion. He'd been exhausted and wired and intensely aware of how fragile life was. He still felt that way. But now he was doing something about it. "You hate it," Miranda said, misreading his silence. "I don't hate it. Evan struggled to find words. "It feels strange, being seen this way, being recognized. For so long I worked really hard to be invisible. And now you're teaching all of us that invisibility isn't safety. It's slow death." Miranda moved to stand beside him, looking up at the plaque. "That photo was taken 3 months before you pulled my father out of a burning building. Did you know that? I found it in your military records. You'd already saved dozens of lives before you saved his, before you saved mine. I was doing my job. You were being a hero. There's a difference." Employees began filing into the auditorium, families in tow. Children ran between chairs, excited to see where their parents worked. Partners looked around with interest, finally getting to tour the mysterious place that claimed so much time and energy. Elderly parents moved slowly through the space, proud and curious. Evan spotted Emery the moment she entered, Gloria right behind her. His daughter had grown in the past year, taller, more confident, her dark hair longer and pulled back in a French braid that Gloria had probably spent 20 minutes perfecting. She wore a navy dress that matched his suit, a detail they'd coordinated that morning over breakfast. "Dad!" She waved enthusiastically, all 9-year-old energy and joy. Evan smiled and waved back, his heart doing that thing it always did when he saw her, expanding with love and gratitude that she was his, that he got to be her father, that they'd both survived their various losses and were still standing. Gloria gave him a thumbs up and mouthed, "You've got this," before steering Emery towards seats in the front row. More people arrived. Michael Torres with his husband and their twin toddlers. Janice Hammond with her teenage daughter who wanted to study business. Robert Chen with his wife, the woman who'd been his partner for 47 years. Susan Chen with her elderly father who'd immigrated from Taiwan in the 1970s and built a life around hard work and sacrifice. And in the back, trying to remain inconspicuous, David Hutchins sat alone. Evan caught his eye and gestured him forward. David hesitated, then slowly made his way to an aisle seat 3 rows from the front. They talked about this, about David's fear of being recognized, of people remembering him as the man who brought a gun to work instead of the man who was rebuilding his life. But Evan had insisted he be here, be visible, be part of this community that was learning how to hold broken things gently until they healed. When the auditorium was full, nearly 500 people, a beautiful chaos of generations and backgrounds and stories, Miranda took the small stage at the front. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying clearly without needing amplification. "A year ago, something terrible happened in this building. An act of violence that could have ended multiple lives and definitely ended our illusions about who we were as a company." The room was completely silent now. Even the children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. "We learned that day that you can't build an empire on indifference. That treating people as disposable creates wounds that eventually bleed. That profits without purpose are just numbers on a screen, signifying nothing that actually matters." Miranda paused, her eyes finding Evan's. "But we also learned what real heroism looks like. Not in movies or stories, but in real life. In a moment of crisis, when someone has to choose between safety and sacrifice." She gestured to Evan, inviting him to join her on stage. He hadn't prepared remarks, hadn't wanted to. But standing there, looking out at all those faces, employees he'd helped, families he'd supported, lives he'd touched in ways big and small, he found words coming anyway. "I'm not comfortable being called a hero," he said. "I did what my training taught me to do. I saw someone in danger, and I moved. That's it. That's all it was." "But here's what I've learned this year," he continued. "Heroism isn't just about dramatic moments. It's about showing up every day and choosing to see people, really see them. The janitor mopping your floor, the security guard at the entrance, the single parent juggling 3 jobs, the veteran struggling with PTSD, the employee who's hanging on by a thread and just needs someone to notice." He looked at David, who was staring at his hands, tears streaming silently down his face. "We're all capable of both breaking and healing, of both causing harm and creating beauty. And the choice we make to see people as disposable or as infinitely valuable, that choice creates the world we live in. Every single day, with every single interaction, we're building either a culture of indifference or a culture of care." Emery was watching him with those serious eyes, and Evan spoke directly to her now. "My daughter asked me once what a hero is, and I gave her some abstract answer about courage and sacrifice. But the real answer is simpler. A hero is someone who refuses to look away from suffering, someone who sees a problem and says, 'I can help with that,' someone who believes that people matter more than anything else." He paused, emotion threatening to crack his voice. "You're all heroes. Every parent here who sacrifices to provide for their family. Every employee who does their job with dignity and care. Every person who chooses kindness when indifference would be easier. That's heroism. That's what changes the world." The applause started slowly, then built to something thunderous. People stood. Emery was crying, Gloria was crying, half the auditorium was crying, and Evan felt simultaneously exposed and exactly where he needed to be. Miranda returned to the microphone as the applause faded. "Many of you know that we've implemented significant changes over the past year. The Merrick Initiative has transformed how we operate, increased wages, expanded benefits, mental health support, veteran services, transition assistance. But those are just policies. The real transformation is in how we see each other." She clicked to a presentation screen that descended from the ceiling. Photos filled it. Before and after shots of the company culture. The before images showed stressed employees, empty break rooms, people eating lunch alone at their desks. The after images showed community, people laughing together, collaborative workspaces, the rooftop garden employees had built together, the meditation room and lactation suite and prayer space that acknowledged people's full humanity. "This is what happens when you invest in people instead of just extracting value from them," Miranda said. "Productivity is up 18%. Turnover is down 42%. Sick days have decreased. Employee satisfaction scores have tripled. But more importantly, people like coming to work. They feel valued. They feel seen." She clicked to the next slide. It was a quote attributed to Evan. "People think janitors clean floors, but maybe we're just clearing the way so others can stand taller." "That's what we're all trying to do now," Miranda said. "Clear the way for each other. Make space for people to stand tall, to use their gifts, to be fully human in a world that often asks us to be machines." She invited several employees to the stage to share their stories. A veteran who'd found meaningful work through Evan's program. A single mother who'd been promoted and was now supporting her family comfortably. A young man who'd been on the verge of suicide until the company's mental health services connected him with a therapist who saved his life. Each story was a testament to what was possible when you chose to see people, to value them, to invest in their wholeness rather than just their productivity. Then Miranda did something unexpected. She invited David Hutchins to the stage. The auditorium went completely silent. Everyone knew who David was. Everyone remembered. David stood slowly, his movements careful, as if he expected someone to object. He climbed the stairs to the stage and stood beside Miranda, looking terrified and brave simultaneously. "David," Miranda said gently, "will you tell everyone what you told me last week about second chances?" David cleared his throat. His voice shook but held. "A year ago, I was the worst version of myself. Broken, desperate, so angry at the world that I stopped seeing other people as human. I brought a gun into this building. I hurt someone. His eyes found Evan's. I hurt a good man who was trying to help me, and I'll carry that shame for the rest of my life. Tears streamed down his face, but he kept talking. But here's what I learned. Shame can either destroy you or transform you, and the difference is whether anyone offers you grace. Mr. Merrick offered me grace. Ms. Cole offered me grace. This company, against all logic and legal advice, offered me grace. They didn't erase what I did, but they didn't let it define me forever either. He pulled out a photograph from his pocket. This is my daughter, Emma. She's 12 now. For a while, she was so ashamed of me she wouldn't speak to me. But last month, she came to visit me at work. She saw what I do here, helping other people who are struggling, being the support I wish I'd had. And she said, "Dad, I'm proud of you." That's what second chances look like. That's what grace creates. David turned to Evan. "Mr. Merrick, I know sorry will never be enough, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of what you gave me, what you all gave me, a chance to be better than my worst moment." Evan stood and embraced David. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Evan barely heard it. He was thinking about how many people never got this, never got the chance to heal, to grow, to become more than their trauma, and how revolutionary it was to build a company, a culture, a world where healing was possible. When the formal program ended, the auditorium transformed into a reception. Tables were loaded with food, not just corporate catering, but dishes from employees' diverse backgrounds, a potluck that honored the beautiful multiculturalism of their workplace. Children played games in one corner while adults networked and shared stories and built connections that transcended office hierarchies. Evan found himself surrounded by people wanting to thank him, to share their stories, to tell him how the programs he'd built had changed their lives. He listened to each one, truly listened, because that was what this was all about, making space for people's stories, their struggles, their humanity. Gloria approached with Emery, who was carrying a rolled-up piece of paper. "Dad, I made something for you," Emery said, suddenly shy. "For the ceremony, but I didn't know if it was good enough to give you in front of everyone." "Whatever it is, it's good enough. You made it." Emery unrolled the paper. It was a drawing, crayon and marker, the kind of art 9-year-olds make that's simultaneously childish and profound. The image showed Evan in his Navy uniform and in his janitor uniform and in his current business suit, all three versions standing side by side holding hands. Above them, in Emery's careful handwriting, "My dad, always a hero, no matter what he wears." Evan's vision blurred with tears. This is perfect." "You mean it?" "I mean it. Can I frame it? Put it in my office?" "Really? Even though it's just a kid's drawing?" "Especially because it's a kid's drawing, because you see me more clearly than anyone else. You always have." He pulled her into a hug, careful not to crumple her artwork. "I love you, baby girl. Thank you for reminding me who I am." "I love you too, Dad, and I'm really, really glad you didn't die." "Me too." Gloria wiped her eyes. "Okay, enough crying. This is supposed to be a celebration. Let's eat something before I dehydrate from all these tears." As they moved toward the food tables, Miranda intercepted them. "Mrs. Merrick, Emery, I'm so glad you could be here." "Wouldn't miss it," Gloria said warmly. The relationship between these two women, Evan's mother and the CEO he worked for, had evolved over the year into something like friendship. They met for coffee monthly, two strong women who'd both learned hard lessons about visibility and value. "Emery," Miranda said, crouching to the girl's level, "your father tells me you're interested in science, that you want to be a doctor?" Emery nodded enthusiastically. "A trauma surgeon, like the one who saved my dad." Dr. Okonkwo would be honored to hear that. "I actually invited her today. She's around here somewhere. Would you like to meet her? Ask her about being a surgeon?" Emery's eyes went huge. "Really? Really? Come on, I'll introduce you." Miranda led Emery away, and Gloria turned to Evan with a knowing smile. "That woman is determined to give your daughter every opportunity in the world. She's determined to give everyone opportunities. That's kind of her thing now. It's a good thing. A really good thing." Gloria squeezed his arm. "I'm proud of you, baby, for saying yes to this job, for being brave enough to be visible again, for teaching that little girl that hiding who you are doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps you small. I learned that from you, Mom. You never let me hide. even when I wanted to. That's what mothers do. We see our children's potential even when they can't see it themselves, and we're annoying about it until they figure it out. Evan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. The weight he'd been carrying, grief over Sarah, guilt over surviving, fear about being seen, hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted into something more manageable, something he could carry without it crushing him. Across the room, he saw Michael Torres introducing his husband to some colleagues, both men beaming with pride. Saw Janice Hammond's daughter asking animated questions about business strategy, already dreaming of her own career. Saw Robert Chen showing his wife the photograph of Evan that hung on the wall, explaining how this young veteran had saved his life twice without knowing who he was. Saw employees from every department, every level, every background, mixing and laughing and building community. This was what was possible when you chose to see people, when you valued humanity over profit, when you believed that everyone, from the CEO to the janitor, mattered equally and deserved dignity. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Miranda called everyone back together for one final announcement. "Before you all head home," she said from the stage, "I want to share something. This year, Halden Financial Corporation achieved record profits. We're up 23%, our highest growth in a decade." Applause filled the room, but Miranda held up her hand. "But here's what I'm most proud of. We achieved those profits while also achieving record employee satisfaction, record retention, and record community investment. We proved that you don't have to choose between profitability and humanity. That treating people well isn't just the right thing to do, it's also good business." She paused, her eyes finding Evan's. "A year ago, a janitor I'd never bothered to see threw himself in front of a bullet for me. And in doing so, he showed me everything that was broken about how I'd built this company, about how I'd lived my life. He gave me a second chance to be better, to do better, to build something that actually matters." Miranda's voice thickened with emotion. "So I'm announcing today that we're establishing the Merrick Foundation for Workplace Dignity. It's a separate nonprofit, funded with $50 million from company profits, dedicated to helping other corporations transform their cultures. To teaching what we learned, that people aren't resources to be exploited, but humans to be valued. And Evan Merrick will serve as executive director." The room exploded with applause and surprised shouts. Evan stared at Miranda, completely blindsided. She smiled at his shock. "We can discuss details later, but Evan, what you built here needs to exist everywhere, and you're the person to make that happen." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and questions and excitement. By the time families started heading home, Evan's head was spinning with possibilities and responsibilities and the sheer magnitude of what Miranda had just offered him. As the auditorium emptied, he found himself standing alone in front of the bronze plaque with his photograph. In the image, he looked young and determined and certain of his purpose, a man who ran toward danger because that's what needed doing. He wasn't that man anymore. He was older, scarred, more aware of costs and consequences. But maybe he was also wiser. Maybe he'd learned that running toward danger wasn't just about bullets and bombs. It was about running toward truth, toward authenticity, toward building a world where everyone got to be fully seen and valued. "Dad?" He turned to find Emery approaching, Gloria having given them this moment alone. "Yeah, baby. Was today what you wanted? When you took this job, is this what you imagined?" Evan thought about it. A year ago, lying in a hospital bed, he'd imagined stability and salary and the ability to provide for his daughter. He'd imagined using his skills to help people, to make small differences in individual lives. He hadn't imagined this, hadn't imagined standing in an auditorium full of people who'd been transformed by programs he'd built. Hadn't imagined being offered the chance to scale that transformation, to help change workplace culture across entire industries. Hadn't imagined his 9-year-old daughter looking at him with such pride that it made his chest ache. "No," he said honestly. "I imagined something much smaller, much safer. This is bigger and scarier and more important than anything I imagined." "Are you going to do it, the foundation thing?" "What do you think?" Emery considered seriously. "I think Mom would want you to do it. I think she'd say, 'Evan, you have gifts and you need to use them to help people because that's what gifts are for.'" The invocation of Sarah, coming from their daughter's lips in her mother's imagined words, broke something open in Evan's heart. "You're right," he said, his voice rough. That's exactly what she'd say. "Then I think you should do it, because I want to grow up knowing my dad changed the world. That he didn't just save a few people, he saved the way people think about each other. That's—" Emery searched for words. "That's the biggest kind of hero there is." Evan pulled his daughter close, this wise, wonderful person he'd somehow been trusted to raise. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just notice it more now because you're not as scared anymore." She wasn't wrong. The fear that had driven him into invisibility, that had convinced him safety meant smallness, had finally loosened its grip. Not disappeared. It would probably always be there, a quiet voice questioning whether he was enough, whether he could do this, whether he deserved to be seen. But it was no longer the loudest voice. The loudest voice now belonged to purpose, to meaning, to the certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Miranda approached, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "So, what do you think about the foundation?" "I think you should have warned me before announcing it to 500 people. If I'd warned you, you would have spent 2 weeks finding reasons to say no. This way, you have to say yes." "That's manipulative." "That's leadership." Miranda smiled. "But seriously, no pressure. If you want to keep building the internal program, that's valuable too. The foundation is just an offer, a possibility." Evan looked at his daughter, who was watching him with complete confidence in whatever he'd decide. Looked at the plaque with his photograph, honoring service and sacrifice. Looked at Miranda, who'd transformed from the Ice Queen into someone who genuinely wanted to make the world better. "I'll do it," he said, "on one condition." "Name it." "David Hutchins comes with me, as associate director. He knows what it's like to be broken by corporate culture. He needs to be part of building something better." Miranda didn't hesitate. "Done." "Anything else?" "Yeah, we do this right. No cutting corners, no compromising values for convenience. We build something that actually helps people, not something that just looks good in press releases." "I wouldn't want it any other way." They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would eventually transform workplace culture across dozens of industries, helping hundreds of thousands of employees find dignity and value in their work. But in that moment, it was just two people who'd survived trauma and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. As they walked toward the exit, Evan took one last look at the auditorium. Empty now, except for cleaning crews who were clearing away the evidence of celebration. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, invisible, small, hiding who he was to feel safe. And he thought about who he was now, visible, growing, using his gifts to help others find their own. The bullet that had torn through his chest had also torn through his illusions about safety and invisibility. It had forced him to confront the truth he'd been avoiding. You can't protect yourself from pain by refusing to be seen. You just guarantee that your life will be smaller than it needs to be. Outside, the city was alive with evening energy. Traffic and voices and the constant pulse of millions of people living their lives, chasing their dreams, surviving their struggles. Somewhere in that crowd was the next David Hutchins, the next person on the edge of breaking. Somewhere was the next company grinding down employees until their humanity cracked. Somewhere was the next veteran struggling to find purpose after service. The next single parent working 3 jobs and still falling behind. The next person who just needed someone to see them, really see them, and say, "You matter." That was the work now. Not just fixing what was broken at Halden Financial, but helping create a world where fewer people broke in the first place, where companies valued humans over profits, where everyone, from CEO to janitor, was treated with dignity and respect, where nobody had to choose between being seen and being safe. It was ambitious, maybe impossible. But Evan had learned something about impossible things. Sometimes they just needed someone brave enough to try. "Dad," Emery said as they walked to the subway, "can I tell you something?" "Always. I used to be scared that you'd do something heroic again and die. But now I'm not scared anymore, because I understand what you were trying to teach me." "What's that?" "That being a hero isn't about dying for something. It's about living for something, about waking up every day and choosing to see people and help people and build things that matter. That's harder than dying. That takes more courage." Evan stopped walking. looked at his daughter, this incredible person who saw the world with such clarity and wisdom. Who taught you that? You did, by being you. And there it was, the thing he'd been searching for since Sarah died, since he'd left the military, since he'd convinced himself that mopping floors in silence was enough, not heroism measured in medals or headlines or dramatic rescues, but heroism measured in daily choices, in showing up, in refusing to hide, in using your gifts to clear the way for others to stand taller. Come on, Gloria said, linking arms with both of them. Let's go home. We have a lot to celebrate, and I make a mean lasagna. They descended into the subway, this small family that had survived so much, and would survive more, because that's what families do. They hold each other through the hard things. They remind each other who they are when the world tries to make them forget. They celebrate victories and mourn losses and keep moving forward because what else is there? On the train home, Evan sat between his daughter and his mother, feeling their warmth and presence, and thought about the year ahead, the foundation to build, the programs to develop, the lives to touch, the culture to change. It was overwhelming when he thought about it too much. But then he remembered what he'd learned in combat, what he'd relearned in the past year. You don't change the world all at once. You change it one person at a time, one conversation, one policy, one act of seeing someone who thought they were invisible. You change it by refusing to look away from suffering. You change it by believing people matter more than anything else. You change it by being brave enough to be seen. His phone buzzed, a text from Miranda. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for giving me a chance to be part of something that matters. Thank you for that bullet you took. I know I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it. You saved more than my life that day. You saved my soul. Evan typed back, we saved each other. That's how it works. And it was true. The shot that changed everything hadn't just been a bullet. It had been a catalyst, a moment that forced everyone involved to confront who they were and who they wanted to be. It had broken them open so they could heal differently, better, more fully human. The train rattled through the tunnel, carrying them home through darkness toward light, and Evan closed his eyes and let himself feel it all. The pain of the past, the possibility of the future, the overwhelming gift of the present moment where he was alive and seen and surrounded by people he loved. He thought about the bronze plaque in the Halden Financial Lobby, about the words etched above his photograph, in honor of those who serve without being seen. But he wasn't invisible anymore. None of them were. They'd all been seen, finally and fully, and in that seeing they'd been transformed. That was the real miracle, not the survival, the transformation. And the story wasn't over. It was just beginning.